There are strange mornings in this world. Mornings where the sun rises on circumstances so peculiar that the universe itself seems to be playing some cosmic joke at your expense. And then there are mornings where you wake up in a 15-year-old minivan with a bun drooling on your neck and your 8-year-old daughter insisting that the pattern of frost on the windshield looks exactly like a cupcake. For Sarah Mitchell, this particular Monday in late October was definitively the second kind. The Dodge Caravan had seen better days, better years, better decades if she was being honest with herself, which she tried not to be before coffee. The seats were worn to the texture of old newspaper. The ceiling fabric sagged in places like tired eyelids. And the smell, well, the smell was a complex symphony of wet stale French fries discovered too late under seats, and something Sarah preferred not to investigate too closely in the trunk area. She opened her eye to find biscuit, a Labrador mix with the emotional stability of a soap bubble and the decision-making skills of a broken compass, staring at her from approximately 2 inches away. His tail was already wagging. His breath was already terrible. And before Sarah could form a coherent thought about either of these facts, he sneezed directly into her face. Then he barked at his own sneeze with genuine surprise. Then he circled twice in the cramped space between the front and back seats before sitting proudly on Sarah's ankle, as if he had just solved world hunger and was waiting for applause. Beside him, Lily was already awake. Of course she was. The child had inherited absolutely nothing useful from her father, but she had somehow acquired an internal alarm clock that activated at precisely 6:17 every morning, regardless of circumstance, location, or how desperately her mother needed another 45 minutes of unconsciousness. Lily was not looking at Sarah. She was looking at the van's ceiling, tracing the water stains with one small finger as if reading a map to somewhere better. Mom, her voice came out in that particular stage whisper children use when they want to be dramatic. Mom, look at the frost. It looks like a cupcake, a really big one, with sprinkles. Sarah groaned and rubbed her face with hands that smelled faintly of the citrus hand soap from the gas station bathroom they had used the night before. Her voice came out rough, scraped raw by exhaustion, and 3 months of sleeping at angles the human spine was never designed to tolerate. Sweetie, that's not a cupcake. That's just where the defrost stopped working. Lily turned to look at her with the particular disappointment that only 8-year-olds can weaponize effectively. Her brown eyes held equal parts judgment and determination. It could be a cupcake, if you believed in it hard enough. Biscuit sneezed again, this time at the window, as if voting in favor of Lily's interpretation. His tail swept an arc across the folded blankets, knocking Sarah's phone onto the floor. This was life now. This was what remained after everything else had been stripped away. A woman with a degree in mechanical engineering, 10 years of experience rebuilding industrial equipment, and letters of recommendation that used words like exceptional and invaluable. A woman who had once managed a team of 12 technicians and could diagnose transmission problems by sound alone. That woman now lived in a parking lot behind a Walmart in Millbrook, Pennsylvania, counting water stains with her daughter and having silent arguments with a dog about condensation patterns. 87 days. That was how long they had been living in the van. Sarah knew the exact number because insomnia had a way of turning every night into an involuntary math exercise. Each sleepless hour became a calculation. Days since the eviction notice. Weeks since the unemployment ran out. Months since her ex-husband had decided that fatherhood looked better in the rearview mirror than through the windshield and had driven himself right out of their lives with the casual cruelty of a man who had never learned to stay. Sarah did not like the word homeless. It made her feel like she was missing something essential, some fundamental human component that other people had been issued at birth, and she had somehow lost in the shuffle. She preferred to think of their situation as temporarily between addresses, which sounded far more adventurous, like they had chosen this lifestyle, like they were explorers charting new territory. Very poor explorers with questionable hygiene and a dog who considered gas station parking lots his personal kingdom. The reality was less romantic. The van had been a last resort after the apartment eviction, which had followed the job loss at the manufacturing plant, which had followed the company closure, which had followed the decision by some executives in a distant office building that Millbrook, Pennsylvania was no longer worth investing in and that 400 workers could simply figure things out on their own. Sarah had figured things out. She had applied for jobs in 3 states, had driven to interviews in cities 2 hours away, had smiled and nodded and demonstrated her expertise on equipment she could rebuild blindfolded. And every time something went wrong, she was overqualified. She was asking for too much money. She was asking it for too little money, which made them suspicious. Her address was a P.O. box, which raised questions. She had a child, which raised concerns about availability. So now she had Lily and Biscuit in a minivan that groaned like an old man getting out of a chair every time she started the engine. A dashboard that lit up with warning lights like a Christmas display designed by someone with serious issues. And exactly $312.40 in her bank account, which had to last until her next welfare check arrived in 4 days. The sun was pushing a soft peach glow across the edge of the Walmart parking lot. Sarah had chosen this spot carefully the night before, far enough from the entrance to avoid security attention, close enough to the streetlights for safety, in the no man's land between noticeable and invisible where people like her learn to exist. She pulled herself upright, her back protesting in 3 distinct locations, and began the morning routine that had become as automatic as breathing. Check the phone for missed calls from potential employers. None. Check the weather for the day. Cold, getting colder. Check on Lily. Lily, who was now explaining to Biscuit her theory that the universe communicated through sneeze patterns, a hypothesis the dog seemed to support with tail wags of increasing enthusiasm. Sweetheart, Sarah reached for the bag of clothes wedged between the seats. Time to get ready for school. Lily's face shifted. The brightness dimmed just slightly, like a cloud passing over a small sun. School meant leaving the van. School meant navigating a world where other children had houses and bedrooms, and parents who packed lunches and kitchens with countertops and running water. School meant lying by omission every single day. She found Lily's Hawks in the bag, one patterned with yellow stars, the other featuring tacos riding skateboards. Her daughter refused to match anything, including logic, which Sarah privately admired even as it made mornings slightly more chaotic than necessary. Put these on. School doesn't let you in barefoot. Lily pulled on the socks with exaggerated concentration, her small face serious. I bet they would if the school floor was made of grass. Then we could feel the earth with our tizzes and connect to nature and probably learn better because of photosynthesis. Sarah managed half a smile, the expression pulling at muscles in her face that had forgotten how. If the school floor were grass, Biscuit would pee on it. Biscuit wagged harder at the sound of his name, proud of something he was not entirely sure about, but committed to celebrating anyway. Lily dissolved into laughter, a sound so pure it physically hurt Sarah's chest. How her daughter could wake up laughing in a 15-year-old minivan that smelled like wet dog and broken promises was a mystery Sarah could not solve. Maybe children just had not learned yet that optimism was supposed to come with an expiration date. After oatmeal heated on their tiny camping stove, wedged behind the passenger seat, and a frantic brushing of teeth using the van's side mirror and water from a gallon jug that tasted faintly of plastic, Sarah and Lily walked to the bus stop 6 blocks away. Biscuit bounced along beside them like a furry trampoline, occasionally stopping to investigate smells that apparently contained vital intelligence about the neighborhood's social dynamics. The October air carried that particular Pennsylvania chill that promised winter was coming, but had not committed to a timeline yet. Sarah pulled Lily's jacket tighter around her shoulders, noting the way the zipper caught halfway up, noting the way the sleeves were starting to ride high on her daughter's wrists. Growing. Lily was growing, and Sarah could not afford to keep up. At the curb, Lily tightened the straps of her backpack, a hand-me-down from the church donation bin, designed for a much older child. It made her look like a turtle carrying its entire house. She looked up at Sarah with worry that did not belong on such a small face. Worry that made Sarah want to punch every circumstance that had led them here. Mom, the word came out small. Do you think we will have a real house again someday? Sarah bent down, her knees protesting the motion, and straightened her daughter's collar with hands that were steadier than she felt. The question sat between them like something alive, something that needed careful handling. I think we will. Her voice came out soft, wrapped in all the false confidence she could manufacture at 7:30 in the morning. I do not know how yet, but I promise I am trying. Lily nodded slowly, like she was deciding whether to believe, like she was testing the weight of hope against the evidence of their current situation. Biscuit licked Lily's hand, either in solidarity or because she smelled faintly of instant oatmeal and maple syrup. With Biscuit, the motivation was always unclear. Motivations. The school bus wheezed to a stop with the sound of hydraulic surrender. Lily climbed the steps, turning back to wave through the window until the bus turned the corner and Sarah's daughter disappeared into the portion of the day where Sarah could not protect her. Then it was just Sarah and Biscuit standing in the chilly morning air of Millbrook, Pennsylvania, a town that had been slowly collapsing in on itself since before Sarah was born. She looked around at the main street she had known her entire life. Half the downtown shops were boarded up now, their windows covered in plywood that had been painted over so many times the original wood grain was just a memory. The movie theater where she had watched films as a child was now home to pigeons with questionable manners and no respect for architectural heritage. The steel mill that had built this town, that had employed her grandfather and her father and half the family she had grown up with, had closed in the 80s. Millbrook had been bleeding population ever since. A slow hemorrhage nobody seemed capable of stopping. The only business that appeared to be thriving was a shop called Tony's Tires and Tacos, which, despite the deeply misleading name, did not actually serve tacos. Sarah found this personally offensive on a level she could not quite articulate. False advertising should come with penalties, particularly when a person was hungry and willing to believe in impossible things. But there was one place that had always felt solid, anchored in a way the rest of Millbrook was not. Rhea's Grocery and Odds and Ends occupied a corner building that looked like it predated the steel mill. Maybe predated the town itself. The brick facade had weathered into something almost beautiful. The hand-painted sign above the door had been repainted so many times the letters had taken on a life of their own, thick and cheerful against the faded red background. Gloria Reyes was 74 years old, sharp as a tack that had been professionally sharpened and then given graduate-level education and tactical awareness. She was warm as a freshly baked muffin, and she had the unusual superpower of knowing everything happening in town approximately 15 minutes before it actually occurred. Gloria had known Sarah's father, had brought her car to his shop for 30 years, had watched Sarah grow from a grease-stained child handing her father wrenches to a woman with a degree and a career and a future that seemed so certain it hurt to remember now. The bell chimed as Sarah pushed open the door. Biscuit trotted in behind her like he owned the place. The smell hit her instantly. Coffee and produce and something baking in the back. The scent of a life that included meals served at tables instead of camping stoves wedged between car seats. It was comforting and real and painful all at once. Gloria looked up from behind the register. Her gray hair pinned into a bun that had not moved since 1974 and probably would not move until the heat death of the universe. Her dark eyes took in Sarah's appearance with the efficiency of an X-ray machine. The wrinkled clothes, the shadows under her eyes, the particular posture of someone who had been sleeping in positions the human body was not designed to maintain. "You look like you slept in a van." Sarah made her way to the coffee pot by the register, the one Gloria kept perpetually full for reasons Sarah suspected had more to do with gathering intelligence than hospitality. Her response came out dry. "I did sleep in a van. It is rude to guess correctly before coffee." Gloria poured her a mug without being asked. The ceramic one with the chipped handle, not the paper cup reserved for strangers and tourists who wandered through approximately once every solar eclipse. Sarah wrapped her hands around the warmth, feeling the heat seep into fingers that were always cold now, permanently chilled in a way hot coffee could not quite fix, but helped anyway. Gloria leaned against the counter with the posture of someone settling in for a conversation she had been preparing. Her voice carried decades of watching people struggle and occasionally finding ways to help that did not wound their pride too badly. "Sarah, you know you can stay in my spare room, just until you get back on your feet. Lord knows the space is sitting empty." Sarah smiled softly, the expression not quite reaching her eyes, but close enough for social purposes. "I appreciate it, really, but if I am taking help from anyone, I want it to be something I have earned." The words came out more defensive than she had intended, but she could not help it. Pride tasted like pennies in her mouth, metallic and bitter, but it was one of the few things she had left that felt like hers. Gloria's charity would come with unspoken debts, with gratitude that would sit in Sarah's stomach like stones. She needed to solve this herself, needed to prove she was not broken beyond repair. Gloria's expression softened into something dangerously close to understanding. Pride tastes worse than my leftover zucchini bread, sweetheart. And that is saying something. Sarah blew on the coffee, watching steam curl in the morning light filtering through the front windows. No new job openings, I suppose. Not unless you want to be a professional zucchini picker for Mr. Harding. But he pays in zucchini, which I realize creates a circular economic problem. Sarah groaned, I will pass. Biscuit gets emotional when I cook vegetables. Biscuit barked as if confirming this statement, which was accurate. He did in fact take steamed broccoli very personally, as if vegetables were a direct insult to his carnivorous heritage. As Sarah sipped on her coffee, something caught her eye. A flyer taped near the counter, slightly crooked, printed on bright yellow paper that screamed for attention like a canary having a panic attack. The words jumped out at her with the force of a dare. Abandoned storage auction. Today only. Millbrook Industrial Yard, lots cheap, contents unknown, starting bid $300. Sarah stared at the flyer. $300. She had $312.40. This was either the universe offering her a lifeline or the universe setting up an elaborate joke at her expense. With the universe, it was always hard to tell. Biscuit sneezed, loudly, enthusiastically, spraying droplets across the yellow paper as if blessing it with holy water. Then he stood on his hind legs and put one paw directly on the flyer. He stared at Sarah with those liquid brown eyes that held absolutely zero cognitive reasoning, but infinite emotional conviction. He sneezed again, louder this time, like he was making a point. Gloria noticed the direction of Sarah's gaze. Her face immediately arranged itself into an expression of profound skepticism. Oh no, do not even think about it. Sarah's voice came out innocent, which was suspicious by default, and they both knew it. What? I am just reading. I know that look. That is the I am about to do something bold and potentially stupid look. I have seen that look on 3 husbands and 2 sons. It never ended well. Sarah kept staring at the flyer. Her mind was already running calculations, already weighing risks against rewards, already constructing arguments for why this was actually a perfectly sensible decision. Storage auctions were gambling. Everyone knew that. You bid on a locked unit. You got whatever was inside. Could be treasure. Could be trash. Could be 47 boxes of someone's collection of ceramic cats with increasingly disturbing expressions. But sometimes people found things, real things, things worth money, things that could change circumstances. Gloria narrowed her eyes into slits that could have cut glass. Sarah Mitchell, do not go throwing money away on rusty mystery boxes. I have lived here long enough to know those auctions are where dreams go to develop tetanus. Sarah opened her mouth to reply, to offer some reasonable explanation for why this was actually worth considering. But the words did not come, because Biscuit was still standing there, paw on the flyer, eyes locked on Sarah's, tail wagging slowly, deliberately, as if he understood exactly what was happening and was voting yes with every fiber of his slightly unhinged canine being. Normally, she would ignore her dog's opinions on major life decisions, would laugh it off as coincidence and questionable canine sinuses. But something about this moment felt different. Emma's hopeful face from earlier, asking about a real house, the tug in Sarah's chest that felt like maybe the universe nudging her towards something. Or maybe the universe had allergies and was communicating through her dog's respiratory system. Hard to tell. The thought bubbled up before she could stop it. Ridiculous and impossible and somehow perfect. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is bet your last dollar on yourself. Gloria, Sarah's voice came out slowly, testing the words as she spoke them. I think I should go. Gloria sighed with the weariness of someone who had watched too many people make questionable decisions and had learned that arguing only made them dig in harder. She reached under the counter and pulled out a muffin wrapped in wax paper, blueberry, from the smell. She handed it to Sarah like a peace offering, or possibly a last meal. Fine, but if you come back with a crate full of expired ketchup packets, do not cry to me about it. Biscuit wagged as if this was the greatest idea ever proposed in human history, possibly including the invention of fire and the domestication of wolves. Sarah took the muffin, feeling its weight in her hand, feeling the weight of the decision settling onto her shoulders like a coat she was not sure she could carry. She had $312.40. She had a daughter who deserved better than a minivan. She had a dog who believed in her unconditionally, even if his judgment was questionable. She had nothing to lose except everything. 1 hour later, Sarah stood in a gravel lot behind the Millbrook Industrial Storage Facility, staring at rows of corrugated metal containers that looked like they contained either treasure or disappointment in equal proportion. The facility smelled like rust and rain and abandoned dreams, like the physical manifestation of giving up. About 40 people had gathered, most of them looking like they did this regularly. Professional bargain hunters with the hollow eyes of people who had learned to see value in other people's forgotten things. They carried clipboards, wore practical boots, spoke to each other in the shorthand of a community Sarah was not part of. The auctioneer stood on a wooden crate, megaphone in hand, calling out lot numbers with the rhythm of a carnival barker who had seen too many carnivals and was tired of all of them. He was 60-something, with a beard that looked like it had its own weather system, a voice that could carry across state lines, and the particular energy of someone who had long ago stopped being surprised by what people stored in metal boxes and forgot about. Lot 22, going once, going twice, sold to the gentleman in the Steelers cap for $250. Sarah's hands were sweating despite the October chill. She had withdrawn $300 in cash from the ATM. Watching her account balance drop to $12.40 with a sense of vertigo that made her stomach lurch. That $12 had to last until Thursday, had to cover whatever emergencies arose between now and then. But she was here now, money in her pocket, decision made. No point in second guessing. Biscuit sat beside her, tail sweeping dust in dramatic arcs, sensing something important was happening even if he could not articulate what. Gerald, the rubber chicken he had somehow acquired from the van's mysterious depths that morning, was clamped firmly in his mouth. He had refused to leave it behind. Sarah had stopped trying to understand. Lot 23A. The auctioneer's voice cracked across the lot like a whip. Heavy item. Vehicle of some sort according to the manifest. Been here 4 years. Rose Holloway Estate. Starting bid $200. Sarah's heart kicked against her ribs. A vehicle. That could be anything from a golf cart to a commercial truck. Could be rusted beyond salvation or could be something with actual value. But the words sent electricity through her nervous system. Her father had taught her engines, had taught her that machines were just puzzles that ran on combustion and faith. If it was a vehicle, maybe she could fix it. Maybe she could sell it. Maybe it was something useful. 200, a voice called from her left. Sarah turned to see a middle-aged man in an expensive leather jacket, the kind of person who bought storage units as a hobby rather than a desperation move. He had the confidence of someone who could afford to lose money on bad bets, the casual arrogance of someone who had never lain awake at 3 a.m, calculating how many days until complete financial collapse. 225, another voice, younger, eager, amateur energy. Sarah's mouth went dry. The bidding was moving fast, and she was already priced out if it went much higher. She raised her hand, surprising herself with the motion. 250. The man in the leather jacket glanced at her, assessed her worn jeans and thrift store coat, the desperation she was trying to hide but probably failing to conceal. He raised his own hand with casual cruelty. 275. Sarah's pulse hammered in her ears. She had 300 total. If she went higher, she would have nothing left for gas, for food, for the inevitable, unexpected disaster that seemed to strike whenever her bank account dropped below $20. But something in her chest pulled tight. That same feeling she had looking at Biscuit's paw on the flyer. The feeling that said this mattered. That this was the door she was supposed to walk through, even if she could not see what was on the other side. 300. Her voice came out stronger than she felt, steadier than her heartbeat, as if some part of her had already decided and the rest was just catching up. The man in the leather jacket studied her for a long moment, his eyes calculating, weighing whether this particular unit was worth fighting a broke woman and her emotional support dog over. Measuring the contents against the effort, he shrugged, turned away, moved on to whatever lot interested him more. The auctioneer's megaphone crackled. 300. Going once, going twice. Sold to the lady with the enthusiastic dog. Relief and terror hit Sarah simultaneously, like two trains colliding in her chest. She had done it. She had actually done it. She had spent every dollar she had on a mystery vehicle that could be anything from a classic car to a rusted-out shopping cart with delusions of grandeur. Biscuit barked triumphantly, as if he had personally negotiated the deal. Gerald the rubber chicken squeaked in what might have been celebration. The auctioneer climbed down from his crate and approached with a clipboard and a set of bolt cutters that looked like they had been used to cut through bank vaults, or possibly the hopes and dreams of previous auction winners. Congratulations. You will need to clear the unit by end of day. His voice carried the bored efficiency of someone delivering the same speech hundreds of times. Oh, and there is a $47 towing fee if you need the vehicle removed, cash only. Sarah's stomach dropped through the gravel and kept falling. $47. Storage facility policy. Item weighs over 2,000 pounds. Requires professional removal unless you got a way to haul it yourself. Sarah did not have $47. She had $12.40. The van's trailer hitch had rusted off 2 years ago. She had no way to haul anything anywhere. She stood there, victory curdling into panic, trying to figure out how to explain to the auctioneer that she had made a terrible mistake, that she needed to undo this somehow, that she had just spent her daughter's grocery money on something she could not even take home. Then she remembered the center console of the van. She had been throwing loose change in there for months, quarters from parking meters, dimes from bottle returns, pennies that accumulated like geological sediment. It was her emergency fund for emergencies so small they did not qualify for the actual emergency fund. Give me 5 minutes. She ran, actually ran, back to the van parked at the edge of the lot. Biscuit loped beside her in confusion, not understanding the sudden urgency but committed to participating anyway. Sarah yanked open the console and started digging, pulling out handfuls of coins mixed with old receipts and fossilized French fries in a hair tie that had been missing for 6 months. She counted frantically, stacking quarters and dimes on the passenger seat while Biscuit watched with intense interest, as if this was a game he did not quite understand but supported anyway. $22 in quarters, 11 in dimes, 8 in nickels, $6.17 in pennies that took forever to count because her hands were shaking. $47.17. Exactly enough, with 17 cents to spare. Sarah scooped the coins into her jacket pockets, feeling the weight drag on her shoulders as she walked back to the auctioneer. She dumped the coins onto his clipboard, a waterfall of metal that represented every bottle return, every couch cushion she had searched, every parking meter that had given back change over months of collecting. The auctioneer looked at the pile, then at Sarah, then back at the pile. Something in his expression shifted, softened into what might have been respect or might have been pity. Hard to tell with his face. This will do. Let me get you the bolt cutters. He handed her the heavy tools, and Sarah approached Unit 23A with hands that trembled slightly. The container looked like every other one in the lot. Corrugated metal painted an industrial shade of surrender. The number scratched into the side in white paint that had faded to gray. Biscuit sniffed at the base of the door, tail starting to accelerate, sensing something that Sarah's merely human senses could not detect. The auctioneer called after her, voice carrying a warning wrapped in amusement. People find weird stuff in these things. Once found 600 ceramic frogs. Another time, a life-size statue of Dolly Parton. And one fellow found a raccoon wearing a vest. Not taxidermy either. Real raccoon. Terrible attitude. Sarah swallowed. Okay, sure, normal. She positioned the bolt cutters on the lock, a heavy master padlock that had rusted into permanence over 4 years of neglect. Biscuit sat beside her, tail sweeping dust in dramatic anticipation, like he was waiting for a curtain to rise on opening night of the most important show of their lives. Sarah squeezed the handles, feeling resistance, then sudden release as the lock clanged to the gravel. She hesitated, hand on the door handle. Everything she had was gone. $312.40 reduced to $12.40. Now reduced to exactly 17 cents in loose change. This was either the best decision of her life or the moment she would look back on as the beginning of the end. Her voice came out soft, a whisper meant for no one in particular. Here goes everything, Biscuit. She swung the door open. A smell drifted out, immediate and unexpected. Dust and flour and something sweet. Cinnamon, maybe. Wrapped in the staleness of 4 years sealed away from sunlight. But underneath the age, something warm, something that reminded her of bakeries in childhood and mornings that did not start in parking lots. And then she saw it, filling almost the entire container, huge and round and cheerfully ridiculous. A bakery truck, pink and white stripes spiraled across the body like peppermint candy. A giant cupcake grinned from the side panel, its frosting painted in swirls that probably looked cute in '94 and now looked vaguely unhinged. The eyes were slightly misaligned, in a way that suggested the cupcake had seen things, had witnessed events it would never speak of, had developed opinions about the human condition and found them wanting. The truck sat on flat tires, rust spots blooming along the wheel wells like flowers in an industrial garden. The windshield cracked in a spiderweb pattern that caught the afternoon light. Across the side, in letters that had faded from bright pink to dusty rose, the name announced itself with unearned confidence. Sugar and Spice Mobile Bakery. Biscuit absolutely lost his mind with delight, tail becoming a weapon of mass joy, barking at the truck as if greeting a long-lost friend, bouncing on his front paws like the ground itself could not contain his enthusiasm. Sarah just stared, her brain trying to process what she was seeing, trying to reconcile the desperate gamble with this specific outcome. She had imagined many things when she raised her hand at that auction. A pickup truck, a motorcycle, maybe a trailer she could sell for parts. Not this, not a bakery truck that looked like it had escaped from a fever dream about birthday parties. One sentence escaped her mouth, soft and stunned and slightly hysterical. Why does it smell like cinnamon? She stepped into the container, heart pounding, not from fear but from something she could not name, something that felt dangerously close to hope, which was dangerous because hope had a way of making the fall hurt more when it inevitably came. The truck filled the space like a sleeping giant, and Sarah felt suddenly small, very brave, or impossibly stupid. The line between those two things had never felt thinner. Biscuit bounded ahead, sniffing everything with scientific intensity, tail never stopping, as if the truck itself was emanating some frequency of joy that only dogs could detect. Sarah approached slowly, her mechanic's eye automatically cataloging damage. Flat tires, definitely. Cracked windshield, rust along the lower panels. But the frame looked solid, the body intact despite the years. The commercial oven built into the side was dusty but appeared undamaged. This was not junk. This was a real truck, a real business vehicle, something with actual potential value if she could get it running. She grabbed the side handle and pulled. The door groaned open with a sound like a haunted bakery in a low-budget movie. Inside, dust motes floated like confused fairies in the shaft of afternoon light. A row of shelves lined the back wall, stacked with old baking pans, paper cups, frosting bags with dried-out tips, and inexplicably a rubber chicken wearing a miniature chef's hat. Sarah blinked, stared at the rubber chicken, stared at Biscuit, who was staring at the rubber chicken with the intensity of someone meeting their soulmate. Okay, sure, normal. Biscuit immediately grabbed the rubber chicken and began parading around with it, squeaking it violently in what appeared to be a ritual celebration of new friendship. The sound echoed in the metal container, absurd and somehow perfect. Sarah climbed into the driver's seat, feeling the cracked vinyl under her hands. Everything was dusty but intact. The steering wheel worn smooth by years of use. The faded pink dashboard with its array of gauges that probably told lies. The glove box held shut with duct tape that had gone brittle with age. Above the windshield, a cracked sticker read, "Making Tuesdays bearable since 1994. On the passenger side, laminated menu card had slipped halfway under the seat. Sarah pulled it out, reading items that sounded like someone had weaponized whimsy. Cinnamon sky swirls, lemon burst twisters, mystery muffin guess the flavor, and something called Ethel's famous surprise buns with the troubling parenthetical notation of no refunds. Sarah squinted at the menu. Surprise buns with no refunds feels like a legal liability. Biscuit continued squeaking the rubber chicken, which she chose to interpret as agreement. Then her eyes fell on something resting on the dashboard, partially hidden under a faded road map. A small pink spiral notebook, its cover decorated with hand-drawn cupcakes and words written in purple marker. Do not open, seriously, do not Rose. Sarah sat back, the notebook in her hands. Rose. Rose Holloway. The woman whose estate this was, whose truck this had been, whose life was now somehow intersecting with Sarah's in ways that made her chest feel tight. She should not open it. It said not to. Clearly, in purple marker. She opened it. Inside, written in bubbly handwriting that suggested its author had never met a loop she did not want to embellish. Pages filled with recipes and margin notes and little doodles of cupcakes engaged in what appeared to be warfare with muffins. There was a heartfelt rant about how Rose's ex-husband did not appreciate the emotional complexities of chiffon cakes and should frankly be exiled to a desert island with nothing but box mix. There were recipe adjustments, temperature notes, a small pressed flour that had turned brown with age. And then, right near the middle, a page that made Sarah's breath catch. The title read, "If you are reading this, it means the truck is yours now." Sarah's hands started to shake. She kept reading, Rose's voice coming through the ink like a message in a bottle that had finally washed ashore. "Do not panic. The truck is safe. Mostly. I never got to finish my dream with Sugar and Spice 2.0. Life got in the way, which is what life does when you are busy making other plans. But if life brought you here, maybe it means you are supposed to finish what I started. Maybe you are supposed to take this ridiculous pink truck and make something beautiful out of it." Sarah read the words again, then again, each time finding something new in the ink. Some additional layer of meaning. This woman, this Rose Holloway, had prepared for this moment, had anticipated that someone would find her truck, had left instructions, had hoped. P.S. Do not start the engine until you check behind the seat. Important surprise. Not alive, probably. Sarah stared at that word, probably. It hung in the dusty air like a question mark she was not sure she wanted answered. She leaned over carefully, reaching behind the driver's seat where the padding had compressed into geological layers over decades of use. Her fingers found an edge, something cardboard, something hidden. She pulled. A box tumbled out, landing at her feet with a puff of dust that made her cough. Biscuit stopped squeaking the rubber chicken and stared at it. They both braced for something, though neither could have articulated what. Sarah lifted the lid. Inside were dozens of unopened bags of flour, the kind that came in bulk from restaurant suppliers. 2 boxes of cupcake liners still wrapped in plastic, a pink apron that read "Flour Power" in glittery letters that had mostly flaked off. And underneath all of that, carefully folded, something that made Sarah's brain temporarily stop functioning. A full-body cupcake costume. She pulled it out slowly, holding it up in the afternoon light. The thing was magnificent in its absurdity. Pink frosting-shaped foam, sprinkles that appeared to be hand-sewn from felt, a face hole in the frosting swirl where a human head would presumably emerge like a confused pastry. The whole thing smelled like storage and dreams deferred and possibly mothballs. Sarah burst out laughing, loud enough that the sound bounced off the metal container walls and startled Biscuit into barking at the truck itself. She could not help it. She could not stop. She had spent her last dollar on a dead bakery truck that came with a cupcake costume. Her life had become a joke with a punchline she could not quite parse yet. "This is ridiculous." She said it to Biscuit, to the truck, to the universe that had brought her here. Completely ridiculous. She held up the cupcake suit, examining it in the light. The craftsmanship was actually impressive. The kind of thing someone had spent real time creating with real love. Whoever Rose was, she had believed in this truck enough to commission a cupcake costume that took a particular kind of beautiful delusion. But there was something else in the box. Sarah set the costume aside and pulled out a weathered leather journal. Its cover cracked like desert earth. She opened it carefully, and her heart kicked when she saw what was inside. Mechanical diagrams, detailed, precise, sketches of the truck's engine labeled with part numbers and specifications. Rose's handwriting filled the margins with notes that read like love letters to machinery. Feb 3, 1998. Replace starter motor. Bosch SR442X. Check every 50K miles. July 12, 2003. Alternator belt slipping. Measured 27.5 inches circumference. Replaced with Gates K060270. Page after page of repair logs. Maintenance schedules. Troubleshooting notes. Diagrams of the electrical system with wires color-coded and annotated. A complete service history spanning 15 years, written in Rose's neat mechanical hand, documenting every time she had crawled under this truck and made it work again. Sarah touched the pages, feeling the indentations where Rose had pressed hard with her pen. This woman had maintained this truck herself for 15 years, had learned its systems and its problems and its solutions, had become its mechanic by necessity and its caretaker by choice. The last entry stopped Sarah cold. The handwriting looked rushed, less controlled than earlier entries. Engine running rough. Suspect fuel injector number 3. Did not have time to fix before storage. Next owner, You will need socket set, fuel line wrench, patience, so much patience, but she is worth it. Trust me. Sarah traced the ink with her fingertip. For a moment, she could almost see it, rose with grease under her fingernails, lying under this truck in some driveway, figuring out how to keep her dream running on determination and YouTube videos and whatever she could afford from the auto parts store. Her throat felt tight. She fixed this herself for 15 years. The words came out like a prayer, like a promise she was not sure she was ready to make. Outside the container, the afternoon sun was starting its slow descent toward evening. Sarah sat in the driver's seat of a truck that would not start, in a storage facility that smelled like rust and rain, holding a journal filled with the mechanical love letters of a woman she would never meet. She had 17 cents to her name. She had a daughter who would be getting off the school bus in an hour, a daughter who deserved an explanation for why they now owned a pink bakery truck and with a cupcake mascot that looked like it had witnessed war crimes. She had a dog who had found his soulmate in the form of a rubber chicken named Gerald. And she had this ridiculous truck, this impossible gift, this bet she had made with everything she had. Sarah tried the key, still dangling from the ignition after 4 years. Nothing. Completely dead, not even a click. She should feel defeated, should feel the full weight of her mistake crushing her into the cracked vinyl seat. But instead, something strange was happening in her chest. She looked at Rose's journal, at the careful documentation of every repair, at the instructions left for whoever came next. She looked at the cupcake costume, at the flower bags, at the evidence that someone had believed in this dream enough to prepare for its resurrection. She looked at Biscuit, who was now wearing the chef's hat from the rubber chicken on his head. Tail still wagging, Gerald still clutched in his mouth, completely confident that everything was going to work out. Somewhere in this ridiculous situation, Sarah could almost hear Rose's voice, coming through the pages of her notebooks, coming through the pink paint and the cinnamon smell and the carefully preserved supplies. Maybe you are supposed to finish what I started. Sarah sat in the truck for a long moment, holding the journal, holding the weight of someone else's dream, feeling it settle onto her shoulders, heavy and impossible, and somehow exactly right. She did not know how to bake. She did not know how to run a business. She did not know how to fix a truck that had been sitting dead for 4 years. But she knew how to learn, knew how to work, knew how to refuse to give up even when giving up was the logical choice. And for reasons she could not fully explain, that felt like enough. Sarah Mitchell, homeless mother, unemployed engineer, owner of one ridiculous pink bakery truck with a cupcake mascot, a box of expired flour, and a costume that looked like it belonged in a fever dream about pastries. This was either the beginning of something or the end of everything. She looked at Biscuit. He sneezed triumphantly. And somehow, against all logic and reason and financial reality, Sarah smiled. Game on. The tow truck arrived 40 minutes after Sarah called the number on the storage facility bulletin board. It was driven by a man who looked like he had given up on conversations somewhere around 1987 and had no intention of rediscovering it now. He loaded the bakery truck onto the flatbed with the efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times and no longer cared about the stories behind the cargo. Sarah followed in her van, watching the pink and white truck ahead of her on the flatbed. So absurd, so impossible, so completely unlike anything she had imagined when she raised her hand at that auction just hours ago. Lily would be getting off the school bus soon. Sarah had no idea how to explain this, had no idea how to frame the fact that she had spent their grocery money on a bakery truck with a cupcake mascot that looked like it had developed opinions about the human condition and found them wanting. The drive back to Millbrook took 15 minutes. Every minute, Sarah's mind churned through possibilities and disasters in equal measure. The truck needed money she did not have. But if she could get it running, if she could somehow scrape together the parts, maybe she could sell it. Maybe someone would pay $1,500 for a functional bakery truck. That would cover repair costs and leave her with profit. Or maybe she could use it, learn to bake, start an actual business, be the kind of person who owns something instead of living in a van counting days until the next welfare check. The thought was so absurd it almost circled back to reasonable. She directed the tow truck driver to the parking lot behind Rhea's grocery. Gloria would hate it, but Gloria would also let her park there because beneath the sarcasm was a woman who understood desperation better than she let on. The truck settled into the gravel with a sound like something giving up and accepting its fate. The tow driver left without a word. Sarah stood there in the late afternoon light, staring at the ridiculous pink vehicle that now represented her entire net worth. Biscuit sat beside her, Gerald the rubber chicken still clamped in his mouth, tail wagging slowly, confidently, as if everything was proceeding according to some plan only dogs could understand. Gloria appeared in the back doorway of her shop, arms crossed, expression cycling through surprise and resignation and something that might have been admiration buried so deep it took archaeological tools to find. Oh, good heavens, it is a cupcake on wheels. Sarah felt defensive about the truck already, which was irrational given that she had owned it for approximately 3 hours. It is a business vehicle, a commercial bakery truck. It is pink. Historically, pink has been a very successful marketing color. Gloria walked closer, circling the truck slowly. Her weathered hand reached out to touch the faded lettering, fingers tracing the words sugar and spice like she was reading something written in a language only she remembered. Something in her expression shifted, softened into memory. I know this truck. Sarah's heart kicked against her ribs. What do you mean? Gloria's voice came out quieter than Sarah had ever heard it, almost reverent. Rose Holloway. She used to park right here, this exact spot, every Thursday morning for years. Sold lemon tarts that were too sweet. Though I told her that every week, she told me I was too bitter to appreciate proper baking. We agreed to disagree while I bought 6 tarts, because spite is an excellent sales strategy. Sarah stepped closer, drawn by the connection, by the sudden bridge between past and present. What happened to her? Gloria's hand dropped from the truck, her eyes distant. Got sick. Cancer. Her nephew came around about 6 months ago, said she had passed, said he was putting her things in storage until he figured out what to do with them. I sent flowers to the funeral home, but never got confirmation they arrived. Sarah felt the weight of that settling onto her shoulders. Rose was gone, really gone. Not just absent, but finished. The woman who had written those notes, who had maintained this truck for 15 years, who had left instructions for whoever came next. She would never know that Sarah had found her message. Gloria looked at Sarah with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. You know what you have here, do you not? A truck that does not run. A chance. Gloria's voice carried decades of watching people waste opportunities and occasionally seize them. Rose's last gift to whoever needed it most. She was like that. Believed in paying forward every kindness anyone ever showed her. The school bus wheezed to a stop at the corner. Sarah saw it through the gap between buildings. Her stomach clenched with sudden anxiety about how to explain all of this. Then Lily appeared, backpack bouncing, hair escaping from its ponytail in the way it always did by afternoon. She saw the truck and stopped dead. Her mouth fell open. Her eyes went wide with the particular expression children reserve for moments of genuine wonder. And then she ran, actually ran toward them with Biscuit loping beside her in confused solidarity. Mom, Mom, Mom. Lily's voice climbed in pitch with each repetition. Did you get something from the auction? Did you get treasure? Did you? She stopped in front of the truck, staring up at us, her face transformed into something Sarah had not seen in months. Pure, uncomplicated joy that made Sarah's chest hurt with how much she had missed it. Oh my gosh. Lily covered her mouth with both hands. It is beautiful. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Beautiful. It is pink. Lily's eyes went wide with the kind of reverence usually reserved for religious experiences. Everything pink is beautiful. Except flamingos, they are suspicious. Biscuit wagged his entire body in fierce agreement, having apparently harbored his own concerns about flamingo trustworthiness that he had been waiting to express. Before Sarah could respond, Lily had climbed into the truck through the open back door. Her voice echoed from inside. Mom, there is equipment in here, and look, Biscuit found a friend. She emerged holding a second rubber chicken, this one wearing the miniature chef's hat. Biscuit stared at it with the intensity of someone discovering a long-lost sibling. Then Lily's gaze landed on the cupcake costume, still visible through the truck's back door where Sarah had left it. She gasped with the force of religious conversion. Is that for me? Sarah heard herself answering before careful consideration could intervene. It is for whoever wants to wear it. Lily tackled the costume like a tiger pouncing on particularly cooperative prey. She wiggled into it immediately, emerging as a human sprinkle explosion with her face poking through the frosting hole. Her arms stuck out at odd angles that suggested the costume had been designed for someone with a different understanding of human anatomy. Mom! Lily's voice came out muffled through the foam. I am delicious. Biscuit barked approvingly, possibly thinking Lily was an actual pastry now and wondering about the ethics of the situation. Gloria made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been despair. With Gloria, it was always hard to tell. Sarah could not help it. She started laughing, really laughing, the kind that hurt her stomach and made her eyes water. This was insane. She had spent her last dollar on a truck that did not run, and her daughter was wearing a cupcake costume in a grocery store parking lot, and her dog was squeaking rubber chickens like it was his sacred calling. This was not how responsible adults solved their problems. This was how sitcom characters created complications for the second act. But Lily was smiling, really smiling, and that counted for something. That counted for a lot. Later that evening, after Lily had reluctantly removed the costume and eaten the last of their canned soup heated on the camping stove, Sarah sat in the truck's driver's seat with a flashlight, reading Rose's mechanical journal cover to cover. The entries spanned 15 years of repairs, adjustments, the kind of persistent maintenance that kept impossible dreams running on duct tape and determination. February 1999. Replaced water pump. Leaked coolant for 3 days before I found the crack. Part number stamped wrong in manual. Actual fit is AC Delco 252711. August 2004. Transmission slipping. Adjusted bands myself using YouTube video from guy in Ohio. Works better than shop wanted $2,000 to do. December 2009. Heater core failed in January. Drove 3 months with no heat wearing 4 sweaters. Finally fixed it in spring. Never again. Page after page, year after year, a woman teaching herself mechanical work through trial and error, through cold mornings under the truck, through parts ordered wrong and reordered, through problems that seemed impossible until they were solved. Sarah found a photo tucked into the back pages, a Polaroid faded and creased, showing a woman in her 60s wearing a pink apron and holding a tray of cupcakes. She was smiling with her whole face, the kind of smile that suggested she knew exactly how absurd all of this was and loved it anyway. Written on the bottom in Rose's handwriting, Rose Holloway, founder of Sugar and Spice. Life is short. Frost generously. Sarah held the photo for a long time, studying Rose's face. This woman had built something from nothing, had fixed her own truck, had left behind not just recipes but instructions, not just dreams but tools. The question was whether Sarah could do the same, whether she had whatever quality Rose had possessed that made impossible things feel achievable, whether desperation was enough fuel to power an engine that had been sitting dead for 4 years. Her phone buzzed, a text from Gloria. Community Center has free mechanics workshop Tuesday and Thursday. Man who teaches is Walter Brennan. Fixed Rose's equipment for years. Call him. Sarah stared at the message. A mechanic who had worked with Rose. Someone who might know this truck's history, its problems, maybe even how to fix it without spending money she did not have. It felt like another sign, another piece of the universe nudging her forward. Or maybe she was just seeing patterns where none existed. Reading meaning into coincidence because the alternative was admitting she had made a catastrophic mistake. Either way, she had no better options. She called the number Gloria sent. The phone rang 4 times. Then a voice answered. Gravel and suspicion in equal measure. The voice of someone who had learned to distrust phone calls and had not unlearned it. Who is this? My name is Sarah Mitchell. Gloria Reyes gave me your number. I bought Rose Holloway's truck at auction today and I need help fixing it. Silence. Long enough that Sarah checked to see if the call had disconnected. Then, you bought Maggie's truck. The nickname stopped her. Not Rose, Maggie. The familiarity of someone who had known her, actually known her. Yes, I did. Another pause. Waited with something Sarah could not identify. 7 tomorrow morning. Martinez Lot. Bring coffee if you want me civil. The line went dead. Sarah took that as agreement. Walter Brennan arrived at 6:45 in a battered Ford F-150 that looked like it had survived wars, both foreign and domestic. He emerged from the driver's side with the deliberate movements of a man whose body had started collecting debts, but who refused to acknowledge the interest payments. He was 68 years old, built from the kind of lean muscle that came from decades of actual work instead of gym memberships. His hands were weathered maps of labor, calluses and scars and knuckles that had clearly won some arguments and lost others. He wore a tool belt slung low like a gunslinger's rig. His eyebrows could have intimidated storm clouds into submission. He walked past Sarah without greeting, circling the truck slowly. His inspection was methodical, clinical. the way a surgeon might examine a patient who had been in a coma for years and whose prognosis remained uncertain. He knocked on panels, kicked tires, peered through windows with a flashlight, even though the morning sun was already bright enough to see. He ran his hand along the seams where body panels met, pressed his palm against the hood like he was taking the truck's temperature. Finally, he stopped in front of Sarah, eyes the color of storm clouds before rain, expression unreadable. "You know anything about engines?" Sarah handed him the coffee she had bought at the gas station, using $2.37 of her remaining $12 because his instructions had been specific and she had learned not to ignore specific instructions from people who knew things she needed to learn. "My father owned Mitchell Auto Repair over on 3rd Street. He taught me to rebuild a small block V8 when I was 16. Walt's eyebrows rose fractionally, which from what Sarah could tell, represented enthusiastic applause from this particular man. Rebuilding a classic car is not the same as working on a commercial vehicle. Different systems, different tolerances, different everything. "Then teach me the difference." He studied her over the rim of his coffee cup, taking her measure the same way he had measured the truck, looking for weaknesses, for cracks, for signs that she would give up when things got hard. Sarah forced herself not to look away. Whatever test this was, she would not fail it by showing doubt. Finally, Walt nodded, once sharp and decisive. "Pop the hood." The engine bay revealed itself like an archaeological excavation. Layers of dust and time and neglect. The smell of old oil hit Sarah immediately, thick and wrong, the smell of fluids that had broken down beyond their useful life. Walt leaned in with his flashlight. Movements precise. He did not touch anything yet, just looked. Sarah recognized the behavior from watching her father work a lifetime ago. First you see, then you understand, then you act. 5 years sitting. Fluids are shot, seals probably dried out, battery as dead as last Tuesday. He pulled a multimeter from his tool belt. Check the voltage. Should read 12.6 for a healthy battery. Tell me what it says. Sarah connected the leads. Watched the digital display flicker and settle. 8.2. Dead battery. Need a new one. 140 at AutoZone. He pulled a clipboard from somewhere and started writing. His handwriting was surprisingly neat for hands that looked like they had wrestled machinery for 6 decades. Oil change. 8 quarts synthetic. $45. Fuel filter. 28. Air filter. 22. Spark plugs. 6 of them. 36 total. Coolant flush. 25. Serpentine belt. 32. Sarah watched the numbers accumulate, each one another obstacle between her and functionality, each one another piece of money she did not have. Walt circled the total with aggressive finality. $328, and that is assuming nothing major is broken, which is optimistic bordering on delusional. The number sat in Sarah's stomach like concrete setting. She had $12.40. Even if she could somehow manifest $300 from pure determination, that still left registration, permits, everything else the truck would need before it could legally operate as a business. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "I do not have that," figured. Walt closed his clipboard with a snap that sounded like punctuation at the end of a very short sentence. "You got anything to trade?" "Like what?" "Skills, time, labor. I need someone to organize my garage. Been a disaster since my wife passed 3 years back. Got so bad I cannot find half my tools anymore. 2 days solid work gets you the parts you need. I have most of them sitting around from jobs I never finished." Sarah's throat tightened, not from sadness, but from something more complicated. This man was offering her a path forward. Not charity, not a handout. An exchange. Work for value. The kind of transaction her father would have understood. Deal. Do not look grateful yet. Place looks like a tornado married a junkyard and they had kids. Ugly kids. He was not exaggerating. Walt's garage occupied a steel building behind his house at the edge of town. Stepping inside felt like entering a mechanical graveyard where organization had come to die a slow and painful death. Tools covered every surface without system or mercy. Wrenches mixed with screwdrivers, mixed with things Sarah could not immediately identify. Boxes of parts sat unlabeled. Mysteries waiting to ambush future Walt with their forgotten purposes. The workbench was buried under projects that might have been started in different decades. Calendars on the wall showed dates from years past. As if time itself had gotten lost in here, and given up trying to find its way out. Lily came along because Sarah had no other option. School was not in session, and leaving an 8-year-old alone was not something Sarah did regardless of circumstances. Walt did not object, just glanced at Lily in her cupcake costume and raised those expressive eyebrows before turning away. Lily immediately appointed herself assistant, taking the job with the kind of seriousness 8-year-olds brought to missions they considered important. Biscuit appointed himself morale officer, mostly by sleeping in sunbeams and occasionally investigating interesting smells. Sarah started with categories, the fundamental principle of organization her father had taught her when she was younger than Lily. Everything has a place, everything in its place, and the first step is knowing what everything is. Hand tools separated from power tools, wrenches sorted by type and size, sockets organized by drive size first, then measurement, SAE in one drawer, metric in another. Because mixing them was how you lost an entire afternoon hunting for one specific wrench while the job sat unfinished and your patience evaporated. She cleaned as she went, wiping down surfaces, sweeping decades of accumulated sawdust and metal shavings and unidentified debris, finding things that made her pause. A woman's gardening glove tucked behind a toolbox, a birthday card never opened, a coffee mug that said "World's Best Mechanic" in faded letters, signs of a life that had been shared here, signs of absence that remained. Lily labeled everything in her careful kid handwriting, tongue poking out the corner of her mouth in concentration. Each label a small work of art with letters that leaned in different directions like they were having a conversation. Walt appeared periodically, testing Sarah. "Hand me a 10mm socket, 3/8 drive." Sarah found it in 5 seconds flat, the muscle memory from her father's shop still living in her hands, still knowing exactly where things should be. Walt grunted, which she was learning represented his highest form of verbal praise. By the second day, the garage had transformed into something approaching functional. Walt walked through slowly, running his hand along newly organized shelves like he was seeing his own space for the first time in years. "You got your father's eye for systems." Then he disappeared into a back corner and returned carrying a worn cardboard box. He set it on the workbench between them. Parts for Maggie's truck. She would order them. I would pick them up. Then life would get in the way, and they would sit here waiting. Fuel filter in here. Spark plugs, belt. Should save you $60, maybe more. Sarah looked at the box, at the parts Rose had ordered but never installed, at the connection between past and present, sitting there in cardboard and plastic wrapping. "Why are you helping me?" "Because Maggie asked me to." The words came out matter of fact, the way you might mention the weather or the time. After she got too sick to work, she told me that if anyone ever found that truck and tried to bring it back, I should help them. Made me promise. I keep my promises. He looked at Sarah directly, his storm cloud eyes holding something she could not quite name. "Your choice now. Accept the help. Get the truck running. Or let pride win and watch it rust." Sarah took the box, hands not quite steady. "Thank you. Do not thank me. Thank Maggie. Now let us see if this engine remembers how to run." The engine work started the next morning. Walt taught with the patience of someone who understood that real knowledge transferred through hands, not just words. You could read about replacing a battery in a manual, but you learned it by feeling the weight of the terminals, by understanding why the negative came off first when removing and went on last when installing. He narrated each step, voice steady, not condescending, just thorough. Negative terminal first when removing. Know why. Sarah thought back to her father's lessons, heard his voice in her memory. Prevent sparks if the wrench touches the frame. Right. Most people do it backwards. Wonder why they are welding their tools to the engine block. The battery connected. Dashboard lights flickered to life like a patient coming out of anesthesia. The radio crackled on, still tuned to an oldies station that immediately started playing something from the 70s about love and mistakes and choices you could not take back. Lily, watching from the truck bed in her cupcake costume, which she now wore as a matter of principle, cheered like they had just landed on the moon. The oil change happened with Sarah underneath the truck on a creeper, Walt beside her pointing out drain plugs and filter mounts with his flashlight. The oil that drained out looked like motor sludge that had achieved consciousness and given up on life, black and thick and wrong in every way. "This oil has been begging for mercy since before you bought the truck. See these bolts, 16 of them, star pattern removal. Why? Even pressure release prevents warping the pan. Your father taught you good. They worked through components systematically. Day after day, the fuel filter, when removed, revealed blockage so complete Sarah was amazed any fuel had ever reached the engine. The air filter looked like it had been used to strain swamp water, then forgotten about for half a decade. Each part they replaced felt like a small victory. Each component, cleaned or renewed, brought the truck one step closer to something that might actually function. But the truck refused to start. It would crank, the starter motor spinning with mechanical optimism, but the engine would not catch, would not fire, would not do the one thing it was built to do. No fuel pressure. Walt diagnosed after the third day of cranking and nothing. They checked the fuel pump, found it dead, replaced it with a junkyard part Walt had in his collection from a job years ago. The truck cranked again, still nothing. Days blurred together, a rhythm of work and frustration and small problems leading to smaller solutions that still did not add up to a running engine. Sarah woke in the van, dropped Lily at school, walked to the truck, worked until her hands ached and her back screamed, picked Lily up, ate whatever cheap food she could manage, slept, repeated. Walt was patient in a way that suggested he had done this before, taught someone mechanical resurrection through sheer, persistent attention to detail. He never rushed, never showed frustration when something did not work, just moved to the next possibility, the next test, the next thing that might be the answer. On day 11, the truck finally started. The engine caught, ran for 30 seconds, rough and uneven, but actually running, actually converting fuel to motion, actually alive. Then it died, with a sound like mechanical disgust, like the engine itself had tried and found the effort unsatisfying. Sarah threw her wrench, safely, away from anything breakable, away from anyone who might be hit, but threw it with the force of 11 days of accumulated frustration, finally finding an exit. She sat hard on the truck's bumper, hands cut in 6 places from fighting with bolts that had not moved in years, knuckles scraped raw, shoulders aching from positions the human body was not meant to hold for hours at a time. This was the moment, the breaking point, the place where giving up started to look like wisdom instead of weakness. Lily appeared with a juice box, settled beside her without words, small body pressed against Sarah's side in silent solidarity. Biscuit put his massive head in Sarah's lap, eyes full of unconditional support that somehow made everything worse because she did not feel she deserved it. Walt's voice came from somewhere above. Know how many times Maggie wanted to quit? Sarah looked up, face streaked with grease and something that might have been tears if she would admit to crying. Walt pointed at the truck's sun visor, the driver's side one that Sarah had flipped up and down a dozen times without really looking. 47 times, she kept count. Go look. Sarah pulled herself up, joints protesting, climbed into the cab, flipped down the sun visor, and there they were, 47 small pencil marks, scratched into the fabric with careful deliberation, each one a moment of wanting to give up, each one a tally of times when walking away had seemed like the only option. And below them, in Rose's handwriting, slightly larger, more deliberate. But I did not. Sarah stared at those marks, at that sentence, at the evidence of someone else's struggle preserved in pencil and determination. Rose had felt this, had stood exactly where Sarah was standing, had wanted to throw wrenches and walk away and admit defeat. 47 times she had wanted to quit. 47 times she had chosen not to. Sarah's voice came out rough. Okay, what's next? Carburetor rebuild. Walt's tone carried the warning of someone delivering difficult news. It is going to take all day, and you are going to hate me halfway through. Already hate you a little. Walt's mouth twitched, which in another universe might have been a smile. Good. Means you are learning. The carburetor rebuild was exactly as terrible as promised. Tiny parts that looked identical but were not. Precise measurements that mattered more than they seemed to. Instructions delivered in Walt's gravel voice that required complete attention and allowed no shortcuts. But by day 17, with Sarah's fingers cramping and her patience reduced to threads, they finished. Walt had her turn the key. The engine cranked, caught, and ran. Rough idle, misfiring on at least one cylinder. But it was running, actually running. The sound filled the parking lot, mechanical and imperfect and absolutely beautiful. Lily erupted from inside the grocery store where she had been doing homework, screaming with joy. Bear howled like he had personally fixed the engine through force of will. Gloria appeared in her doorway, nodding once, the closest she came to celebration. Walt allowed himself the smallest smile, the expression strange on his weathered face. Not bad, Mitchell. Sarah's hands shook on the steering wheel. They had done it. She had actually done it. The truck was running. Then Walt delivered the next blow. Voice flat, matter of fact. The way you deliver news you know will hurt. Now the bad news. Registration is expired by 4 years. Cannot legally drive this on public roads without current plates. Commercial vehicle classification, health department requirements, business license. He pulled up the Pennsylvania DMV website on his phone, walking her through fees with the enthusiasm of someone reading a very long obituary. Back registration penalties, title transfer, commercial vehicle classification, inspection fees. The total came to $625. Sarah sat in the idling truck, listening to the engine that finally worked, feeling the vibration of success through the steering wheel, and understanding that she was exactly as stuck as she had been before. She could not afford registration, could not drive the truck legally, could not sell cupcakes without proper permits, could not make money without the ability to operate. The math was brutally simple. Need money to register, need registration to make money, a perfect trap with no visible exit. That night, Sarah sat in the truck's driver's seat while Lily slept in the van, reading Rose's recipe notebook by flashlight. The recipes were detailed, careful, written with the precision of someone who had learned that baking was science as much as art. Measurements exact, temperature specific, times listed down to the minute. Cinnamon sky swirls, requires ribbon stage for the egg mixture. Do not rush this step, 12 minutes minimum. Lemon burst twisters, zest must be fine. Use microplane. Coarse zest creates texture issues in the crumb. Mystery muffins. The mystery is cardamom. Tell no one. Sarah had never made a cupcake in her life, had burned instant pudding once in college, had considered toast an advanced culinary achievement. But Rose had left instructions, and Rose had learned too, had started somewhere, had probably burned things and failed and kept going anyway. 47 times she wanted to quit, but she did not. The next morning, Sarah found the library. The Millbrook Public Library was a small brick building that had survived the town's decline through sheer institutional stubbornness. The computers were old, the internet was slow, but it was free. She spent 4 hours watching YouTube videos. Cupcakes for complete idiots, why your baking fails and how to fix it, the science of flour and why it hates you. She took notes in a spiral notebook, pages filling with temperature conversions and ingredient ratios and the mysterious difference between baking powder and baking soda that apparently mattered enormously and that everyone except her seemed to understand instinctively. Her first attempt happened 3 days later. Using the camping stove and a makeshift oven constructed from cardboard and aluminum foil that she was reasonably certain would not catch fire. The results were burnt on the bottom, raw in the middle, and tasted like Sarah had weaponized sadness and formed it into vaguely circular shapes. Biscuit refused to eat them, which from a Don who regularly consumed grass and attempted to eat his own tail fur represented harsh criticism indeed. Lily tried one bite, her face performing gymnastics trying to find something polite to say. Mom, these taste like failure. I was going to say interesting, but yeah. Walt appeared that evening with information that changed everything. You know, the truck's oven works, right? Sarah stared at him. What? Built-in commercial convection oven, industrial grade. How did you think Maggie baked 200 cupcakes a day? Interpretive dance. The oven, when they hooked it to the truck's generator, worked perfectly. Temperature controls that actually corresponded to reality. Space for 6 cupcake pans simultaneously. The professional equipment Sarah had been ignoring because she did not know it existed. Her second batch was better. Not good, but better. The bottom was only slightly burnt. The middle was almost cooked through. Third batch was bland, under-seasoned, the texture wrong in ways she could not articulate. Fourth batch, she forgot the baking powder entirely, resulting in hockey pucks that could probably stop bullets. Then Helen arrived. Helen Brennan was Walt's younger sister, 65 years old. Retired chemistry teacher who had spent 3 decades explaining molecular bonds to teenagers who would rather be literally anywhere else. She approached baking with the precision of someone who understood that every recipe was essentially a chemistry experiment with delicious potential outcomes. Leavening. She held up a container of baking powder like it contained the secrets of the universe. Chemical reaction. Acid plus base equals carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide creates lift. creates rise, creates the texture you are looking for. She explained gluten development like protein architecture, demonstrated mixing techniques with the authority of someone who had seen every possible way to mess up and had cataloged them all, made clear that an oven thermometer was essential because ovens lied constantly and with malicious intent. The thermometer cost $8. Gloria put it on Sarah's tab without comment, the invisible debt growing like interest Sarah could not afford, but accepted anyway because the alternative was failure. Batches 7 through 25 became Sarah's education in failure as a learning tool. Too hot, dome tops that cracked like desert earth. Too cool, flat sad things that refused to rise. Overmixed, tough and chewy in all the wrong ways. Undermixed, pockets of flour that tasted like disappointment. Wrong pan size, wrong cooling time. Too much vanilla, not enough salt. Each batch taught her something. Each batch was slightly less terrible than the previous disaster. Progress measured in increments so small they were almost invisible, except when you lined all the failures up and saw the trajectory. Batch 26 happened on a Tuesday morning, rain against the truck's windows. Lily at school, Sarah alone with the recipes in the oven and the accumulated knowledge of 25 previous attempts. She followed Rose's vanilla bean classic recipe exactly. Every measurement precise, every step completed with careful attention. The oven thermometer confirmed steady temperature throughout. The mixing stopped the moment ingredients combined. The toothpick came out clean. She pulled the cupcakes from the oven. They were golden, actually golden. Dome tops that curved perfectly, even color across all 12. The smell filling the truck like a promise that maybe the universe occasionally kept its word. Gloria appeared to test, her face skeptical because Gloria approached everything with suspicion earned through 74 years of watching people disappoint her expectations. She bit into one, chewed slowly, swallowed, looked at Sarah with something that might have been respect. Well, that does not completely suck. From Gloria, it was a standing ovation. Sarah nearly cried into the frosting. But success created new problems. The eternal pattern of solving one obstacle, only to reveal the next one hiding behind it. She tracked costs obsessively now. Every ingredient measured against profit margins that needed to exist before she could legally sell anything. Each batch of 144 cupcakes cost $67 in ingredients. Selling at $3.50 each, assuming she sold every single one, would net profit of $436. Subtract the ingredient cost, and she would clear $369 per day. Except she could not sell them. No registration meant no legal sales. No legal sales meant no income. No income meant no money for registration. The cycle was perfect in its cruelty. Sarah took a night shift at Target, stocking shelves for $12 an hour, 11 at night to 6 in the morning, sleeping 4 hours before Lily woke up, then working on the truck, then picking up Lily, then collapsing, then doing it again. Her body moved through days like a ghost with ambitious plans, eyes hollow, hands mechanical, mind running calculations even in dreams. Frank noticed, said nothing, but started showing up with sandwiches he claimed were extra from lunch. The lie was transparent, but Sarah ate them anyway because pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. Lily started her own project, the Cupcake Fund, written in crayon on a mason jar. She collected bottles and cans from the school recycling bins, sorted them during recess, carried them home in her backpack. After 2 weeks, she presented Sarah with the jar, $4.60 in change, her face so proud that Sarah had to turn away, pretending to check on the truck because she could not let Lily see her cry. Week 5. Walt found Sarah asleep standing up, actually unconscious on her feet while leaning against the truck. He grabbed her shoulders before she fell, steadied her with hands that knew how to handle things that were breaking. Mitchell, you are going to kill yourself. I am managing. You are not. He studied her with an expression that might have been concern if his face did that sort of thing. Eyes taking in the shadows under her eyes, the weight she had lost, the way her hands trembled even when she was not doing anything. How much are you short for the permits? Sarah did the math automatically, the numbers living in her head like unwanted tenants. $643. Walt pulled out his checkbook, wrote with the deliberation of someone making an important decision, the pen moving slowly across paper, creating something that would change things. $650. Payment plan, $50 a month when you are profitable. No interest. Walt, I cannot. Not charity. Investment. He tore the check free, held it out. Maggie asked me to help whoever found that truck. I promised her I would. Taking this lets me keep my promise. Sarah looked at the check, at the number written there, at the path forward it represented. She took it, hands shaking, and started crying, which was mortifying but apparently unavoidable. Weeks of exhaustion and fear and determination crashing together into something she could not control. Walt looked horrified, patted her shoulder once with the awkwardness of someone comforting a startled animal, then fled to his truck like a man escaping a building on fire. Sarah stood there in the parking lot, check in hand, tears on her face, the setting sun turning everything gold and pink and possible. She had the money for permits now. The truck ran. Her cupcakes were finally edible. Tomorrow she would start the paperwork. Tomorrow she would take the next step towards something that might actually work. Tonight she climbed into the van where Lily was already sleeping, curled around Biscuit like they were one creature made of hope and fur. She pulled the sleeping bag over them both, and for the first time in weeks, Sarah slept without calculating, without planning, without the endless math of survival running through her dreams. She slept, and somewhere in that sleep she could almost hear Rose's voice, coming through across the years, across the distance between the living and the dead. You did not quit. Good, now keep going. Sarah intended to. The permit office smelled like bureaucracy. That particular combination of old paper and stale coffee and the quiet desperation of people who needed things from a system that moved at its own pace, regardless of their urgency. Sarah sat in a plastic chair that had been designed by someone who actively hated the human spine. Lily sat beside her, still wearing the cupcake costume because she had refused to take it off for what was now the fourth consecutive day. Biscuit waited in the van outside, probably having a conversation with Gerald about the injustices of being excluded from government buildings. The clerk behind the counter moved with the urgency of continental drift, each form examined with the thoroughness of someone searching for reasons to say no. Each question asked as if Sarah's answers might contain hidden traps that required careful navigation. 3 weeks, that was how long the permit process took. 3 weeks of forms and fees and inspections and waiting. 3 weeks of Sarah's savings from the Target night shifts slowly draining while the truck sat idle in Gloria's parking lot. 3 weeks of watching other people go to work while she sat in plastic chairs and answered questions and tried not to scream. But finally, the last form was stamped, the last fee was paid, the last inspector had examined the truck's equipment and pronounced it acceptable for commercial food preparation. Sarah walked out of the permit office holding a folder of documents that represented permission. Permission to sell cupcakes. Permission to try. Permission to find out if any of this had been worth the cake. Opening day arrived on a Thursday morning in late September. The kind of Pennsylvania day where the sky could not decide between gray and blue and settled for something in between that promised nothing and delivered less. Sarah had been awake since 3, baking in the dark, the truck's oven glowing like a beacon in the pre-dawn quiet of Gloria's parking lot. 120 cupcakes cooling on racks, vanilla bean classic, chocolate thunder, cinnamon sky swirl, lemon burst, the 4 flavors she had practiced until she could make them in her sleep, until her hands knew the recipes better than her brain did. Lily woke at 5:30, appeared in the truck doorway already wearing the costume, her face serious with the weight of responsibility she had assigned herself. Is it time? Almost, sweetheart. 2 more hours. I have been practicing my dance. I know. I heard you in the van at midnight. That was rehearsal. This is opening night. Different energy. Sarah could not argue with that logic. Different energy indeed. Gloria appeared at 7 with coffee and criticism. The coffee was hot and strong. The criticism was delivered with the particular affection that Gloria reserved for people she had decided to care about despite her better judgment. You look terrible. Thank you, very supportive. I am being honest. Honesty is more valuable than support. You have not slept enough. Your hands are shaking, and there is frosting in your hair. Sarah reached up, found the frosting, decided it did not matter. Is the coffee free? Nothing is free, but I will add it to your tab. Walt arrived at 8, examined the truck with his usual methodical attention, checked the equipment, tested the generator, made sure everything was functioning the way it was supposed to function. You ready? No. Good. Ready is for people who have not thought it through. Scared means you understand what is at stake. He walked away, which was his way. But Sarah noticed he did not leave, just positioned himself at the edge of the parking lot, watching, waiting, present without intruding. 9 o'clock. Sarah opened the serving window. The morning air rushed in, cold and clean, and carrying the particular emptiness of a moment that could go either direction. Triumph or disaster, beginning or end. No way to know until it happened. The parking lot stretched before her, empty except for her van parked in the corner. Gloria's building rose behind the truck. Brick and memory and decades of watching businesses come and go. The hardware store next door had a help wanted sign in the window that had been there so long it had faded to near invisibility. Main Street was visible through the gap between buildings. People walked past, headed to the diner for breakfast, to the bank to do whatever people did at banks, to the pharmacy to pick up prescriptions. Lives in motion that did not include stopping at a pink bakery truck run by a woman they had never heard of selling cupcakes they had no reason to want. Sarah waited, hands gripping the edge of the serving window, knuckles white with the tension of hoping. Lily danced beside the truck, small movements at first, warming up, the sprinkle dance she had invented during the long weeks of waiting, spinning and twirling in her cupcake costume, her breath visible in the cold air, her determination visible in everything else. No one watched, no one stopped. No one seemed to notice that something new existed where nothing had existed before. 9:15. The parking lot remained empty. Sarah counted cupcakes, counted minutes, counted the particular kind of silence that felt like judgment. 9:30. Finally, a woman approached. 70s, gray hair, the careful walk of someone whose joints had opinions about cold weather. She examined the truck with the skeptical expression of someone who had seen too many things fail to believe easily in new things. Mrs. Kowalski. Gloria appeared beside her like she had been summoned. This is Sarah. She makes cupcakes. They do not completely suck. High praise from Gloria. Mrs. Kowalski seemed to understand this. She ordered 2 cupcakes. Vanilla bean classic. Paid with exact change from a coin purse that had probably been old when she was young. You are very brave, dear. Millbrook needs optimists, even unrealistic ones. She walked away, eating 1 cupcake, carrying the other. Sarah looked at the $7 in her cash box, looked at the 118 cupcakes still waiting, did the math that had become automatic. At this rate, she would need 40 years to break even. 10:15. A man in a business suit stopped, looked at the truck, looked at his watch, looked at the truck again, ordered 1 chocolate thunder, ate it standing there, his expression shifting from skepticism to surprise to something that might have been approval. This is actually good. Thank you. He left, did not look back. But he had said it was good. That was something. 11 o'clock. 3 hours open. 7 customers total. $24.50. Sarah had spent $67 on ingredients. The math was brutal. The math was always brutal. Lily had stopped dancing, sitting on the truck's back step, costume drooping slightly, the particular dejection of a child who had believed in something and was watching it fail to materialize. Mom, are people going to come? I do not know, sweetheart. The honest answer, the only answer Sarah had. Then 3 teenagers appeared. They were maybe 16, 17. The particular combination of confidence and uncertainty that came with that age. They approached the truck with the swagger of people who thought they were discovering something no one else had found. One of them, a girl with purple streaks in her hair, pulled out her phone, started recording. Yo, this truck is wild. Look at that cupcake. It looks traumatized. Her friends laughed, not mean laughter, surprise laughter, the kind that came from encountering something unexpected. The boy ordered 3 cupcakes, 1 of each flavor except lemon burst, paid with a 20, told Sarah to keep the change. They stood there eating, the girl still recording, capturing Lily who had started dancing again, capturing Biscuit who had wandered out of the van and was sitting beside the truck, looking noble and ridiculous with Gerald in his mouth. Your kid is adorable. The girl said it to her phone as much as to Sarah. Look at this dance. This is content. They left, still eating, still recording. Sarah thought nothing of it. Teenagers recorded everything. It did not mean anything. Except it did. The post went up at 11:47. The girl whose name Sarah would later learn was Madison had uploaded a video to Instagram with the caption that would change everything. This cupcake truck, lady is trying so hard, but actually slaps. 3 photos. The truck with its googly-eyed mascot. Lily mid-dance in her costume. A close-up of the chocolate thunder cupcake showing frosting, work that looked almost professional. The video showed Lily dancing, showed Biscuit sitting with Gerald, showed Sarah in the serving window looking exactly like someone who had been awake since 3 and was running on coffee and desperation. Madison had 47,000 followers. 47,000 people who suddenly knew that a pink bakery truck existed in Millbrook, Pennsylvania. 47,000 people who watched an 8-year-old dance in a cupcake costume and felt something shift in their chests. The first wave hit at 12:15. It started with 2 college-age girls who had seen the video during a break between classes. They ordered 4 cupcakes between them, photographed everything, tagged the location. Then a family appeared, mother, father, 2 kids who pointed at Lily and asked if they could dance with her. Lily obliged, teaching them a simplified version of the sprinkle spin while their parents watched and filmed and ordered a dozen cupcakes to take home. Then 8 more people, then 12, then 20. A line forming where no line had existed, stretching across the parking lot, people holding phones, showing each other the video, pointing at Lily who had started dancing with renewed energy, fueled by the attention she was finally receiving, pointing at the truck that suddenly seemed like something worth visiting instead of something to walk past. Sarah worked the register, hands moving faster than thought, taking orders, making change, wrapping cupcakes in the tissue paper Gloria had donated, trying to keep up with demand that had materialized from nothing. Thank you. She said it to everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for giving this a chance. 1:30, 50 cupcakes sold. The display case looking emptier than she had ever seen it during business hours. Sarah started rationing, saving a few of each flavor for customers who had been waiting longest. Then 60 sold, then 80, then 100. 2 o'clock. The display case was empty. 120 cupcakes gone in less than 5 hours. Sarah stood in the truck staring at the vacant trays, at the cash box heavy with bills and coins, at the line of people who had arrived too late and were asking when she would have more. Tomorrow. Her voice came out stunned, barely recognizing itself. Same time tomorrow. The crowd dispersed, slowly, reluctantly. Some people took photos of the empty truck as if documenting a phenomenon they might not see again. Some asked for business cards Sarah did not have. Some just stood there looking at the pink truck and the exhausted woman in the window, and the 8-year-old in the cupcake costume who was now lying on the ground making snow angels in the gravel. Sarah counted the money 3 times, not believing the total. $420 minus ingredients, minus permit costs amortized across expected sales. Profit of approximately $300. In one day, 5 hours of actual selling. More money than she had made in a week of overnight shifts at Target. More hope than she had felt in months of trying. Lily climbed into this truck, collapsed onto the floor in her costume. The foam frosting flattened from hours of dancing, the felt sprinkles coming loose in places. But her face was radiant, exhausted and radiant. Mom, did we do it? We did something. Sarah sat down beside her, feeling every hour of the day in her bones. I'm not sure what yet, but we did something. Biscuit appeared, squeezed through the truck door, lay across both of them with Gerald still in his mouth, his tail wagging slowly, contentedly, as if he had always known this would happen, as if the universe had simply taken its time catching up to what he had believed all along. The blogger appeared on day 3. Her name was Megan Foster, 29, red hair that caught light like it was specifically designed to be photographed. She introduced herself as a food writer. Local focus, remote work, looking for interesting stories in a region that did not always provide them. I saw the Instagram video, followed the trail here. That is a lot of buzz for a truck that has been open 3 days. Sarah wiped flour from her hands, not sure how to respond to someone who analyzed food for a living. I just make cupcakes. You make more than cupcakes. Megan's eyes were already cataloging. The truck, the costume, the story that she sensed underneath the surface. You make narrative. People do not line up for 40 minutes for baked goods. They line up for story, and you have one. I can tell. She ordered one of each flavor, photographed them from angles Sarah had not known existed, ate them slowly, taking notes on her phone between bites. These are legitimately excellent. Where did you learn? I did not learn. I failed 25 times until the 26th batch worked. Megan smiled, the expression of someone who had found exactly what she was looking for. That is the story. Can I interview you? The blog post went live 4 days later. Hidden gem alert. Sugar and Spice Mobile Bakery, best cupcakes outside Pittsburgh in a pink truck behind a grocery store. The article told Sarah's story, the auction, the truck, the woman named Rose who had left instructions for whoever came next, the 26 batches, the daughter who danced, the dog who carried a rubber chicken for reasons no one could explain. The photos made everything look intentional, made the pink truck look charming instead of ridiculous, made the googly-eyed cupcake look quirky instead of unsettling, made Sarah look like someone building a dream instead of someone desperately trying to survive. The article spread, shared across social media, picked up by a Pittsburgh food account with 200,000 followers, mentioned in a regional newspaper column about small business resilience. By the end of week 2, Sarah was selling out every day, 150 cupcakes, then 180, then 200, lines forming before she opened, customers driving from neighboring towns, the pink truck becoming a destination instead of an accident. She hired help, informally. Neighbors who wanted extra cash, Gloria's nephew who needed something to do after school, anyone willing to work for hourly wages paid in cash because Sarah did not yet understand payroll taxes or employment law or any of the systems that proper businesses navigated. The money accumulated, $200 profit one day, $300 the next, enough to pay Gloria back faster than expected, enough to send Walt his first payment ahead of schedule, enough to imagine that maybe this was real, maybe this would last, maybe she had actually built something instead of just delaying the inevitable. Then Rick Tanner arrived. He came on day 18, before dawn. Sarah heard the rumble of his engine while she was still in the van, a sound too large to be a regular vehicle, too purposeful to be passing through. She climbed out to find a food truck the size of a small building pulling into Gloria's parking lot, positioning itself exactly 30 feet from Sugar and Spice, close enough to share customers, far enough to claim innocence. The strategic placement of someone who had done this before, who understood exactly how to occupy space in a way that said mine without saying anything at all. The truck was professional in a way Sarah's was not, gleaming steel that caught the early morning light, commercial-grade equipment visible through the serving window, a generator that hummed with the quiet confidence of expensive engineering, a menu board offering everything from pizza to tacos to cheesesteaks to breakfast burritos to cupcakes. Cupcakes, listed right there, third from the bottom, $3 each, 50 cents less than Sarah charged, competing directly. Rick emerged from the driver's side like a man stepping onto territory he already owned. 52 years old. Built from the kind of mass that suggested both strength and appetite, he moved through space expecting it to accommodate him, his footsteps heavy on the gravel, his presence filling the parking lot in a way that made everything else feel smaller. Morning neighbor, his voice carried across the distance, loud enough to be heard, friendly enough to seem innocent. Rick Tanner, Big Rick's Gourmet Street Eats. Figured I would set up here. See how it goes. He smiled, teeth too white, eyes too calculating. Public parking right. First come, first served. Sarah felt her stomach drop through the gravel and keep falling. The parking lot was public. Gloria owned the building, but not the asphalt beneath her feet. Anyone could park here. Anyone could sell here. Anyone could take what she had built and turn it into a competition she could not win. She watched Rick position his truck. Precise movements, calculated angles, blocking sight lines from Main Street, making Sugar and Spice invisible to anyone approaching from the primary direction, making his truck the first thing anyone would see. He started generators, plural, multiple systems powering up with the authority of serious investment. Music began playing through external speakers, something upbeat and generic, loud enough to create atmosphere, loud enough to drown out conversation anywhere near Sarah's truck. Then the samples came out, small portions of his most popular items, offered free to anyone who passed, the particular generosity of someone who could afford to lose money in the short term because the long term belonged to whoever lasted longest. His staff arrived, 3 of them, young, efficient, wearing matching shirts with his logo, a team where Sarah had only herself. Day 18 sales, $112, less than a third of what she had been making. Customers pulled toward Rick's truck by the music and the samples and the sheer overwhelming presence of something that looked like success. Day 19. Rick arrived earlier, set up faster, took the better position before Sarah finished her prep work. The music started at 7:30. The samples appeared at 8. By the time Sarah opened her window, the parking lot had already chosen its preference. $90. The number felt like a punch. Day 20, $87. The number felt like drowning. Sarah approached him during the afternoon lull, that quiet hour when the lunch crowd had dispersed and the dinner crowd had not yet appeared, when even Rick's impressive operations showed cracks of inactivity. She walked across the parking lot, feeling his eyes on her, feeling the weight of what she was about to attempt. "Can we talk about positioning?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "This lot is pretty small for two vendors." Rick turned from whatever he had been doing, his expression rearranging into something that looked like welcome but felt like calculation. "Sure, what is up?" "You are blocking sight lines to my truck. Customers cannot see me from the street. Can you park further back?" She had practiced the request, made it reasonable, made it professional, made it the kind of thing one business owner might ask another in the spirit of coexistence. Rick's smile widened, the expression of someone who had been waiting for this moment, who had positioned his truck specifically to provoke this conversation, who wanted to see her ask so he could enjoy refusing. "Look, sweetheart, I get it. You got a cute setup here." The word cute landed like dismissal. "Amateur hour with a pink paint job. But I am running a real business. You want customers. Get a real menu, real equipment, real investment, or get out of the way." The word sweetheart hit Sarah like a slap. Condescending, dismissive. The particular kind of insult that pretended to be affection while communicating contempt. The kind of words certain men use when they wanted women to feel small, when they wanted to remind them that the world belonged to people who looked different than they did. Sarah's fist clenched, nails digging into palms hard enough to leave marks. The anger building in her chest like pressure seeking release. Every frustrated night in the van. Every rejected job application. Every moment of being underestimated and overlooked and dismissed. All of it compressed into this moment. This man. This word. But screaming at competitors in parking lots was not how adults solve problems. Regardless of how satisfying it might feel. Regardless of how much he deserved it. "Oh, I have every right to operate here." Her voice came out cold, controlled, the temperature of someone saving their heat for when it would matter. "Then may the best vendor win." He cranked the music louder. Conversation over, dismissal complete, back to business as if she had never been there at all. Sarah walked back to her truck, feeling smaller than she had felt in weeks, feeling the precariousness of everything she had built, how easily it could be taken, how little power she actually had. Walt found her that evening, sitting in the truck, staring at the cash box that held less money than it had the day before. "He is trying to starve you out." Classic tactic. Establish presence, undercut prices, wait for the competition to give up. "I am not giving up." "Good. But you cannot outmuscle him, need to outsmart him." They strategized. Gloria joining, Helen contributing. Even Megan, who had become a regular presence, offering suggestions, bouncing ideas. Quality focus. Sarah's cupcakes were better. Everyone agreed on that. Rick's were mass-produced, decent but not special. Focus on what made sugar and spice different. Niche specialization. Rick offered everything. Sarah offered cupcakes. Become the cupcake destination. Own that category completely. Customer loyalty. Frequent frosting cards. Buy 10, get one free. Reward the people who chose her over the easier option. Scheduled entertainment. Lily's sprinkle dance at noon 3 and 5. Make it an event. Give people a reason to come at specific times. Social media consistency. Megan would keep writing, keep posting, keep building the narrative that made people care about the underdog. The next 2 weeks became a war of attrition. Rick had resources, had experience, had the willingness to lose money in the short term to win in the long term. But Sarah had something he did not. She had the story. The woman who bet everything on a pink truck. The daughter who danced in a cupcake costume. The dog who carried a rubber chicken named Gerald. The recipes left by a woman named Rose who believed in second chances. People wanted her to win, wanted it badly enough to drive past Rick's truck, to wait in longer lines, to pay slightly higher prices, to choose story over convenience. By day 30, sales had stabilized, $350 to $400 daily. Not what she had been making before Rick, but enough. Enough to survive, enough to keep going, enough to prove that she was not going to disappear just because someone bigger had decided to take what she had built. Then the lawyer's letter arrived. It came in a white envelope, crisp and official, the kind of envelope that announced its own importance through quality of paper and precision of address. The return address was a law firm in Pittsburgh, Hendricks, Morrison, and Callaway, names that sounded like money and complications. Sarah opened it standing in the parking lot. The morning rush had not yet started. Lily was still asleep in the van, the world quiet enough to hear the paper unfold. She read it twice because the words did not make sense the first time. Nathan Holloway, attorney at law, representing the estate of Margaret Rose Holloway, contesting the sale of property from Millbrook Industrial Storage Unit 23A, claiming improper liquidation procedures pursuant to Pennsylvania state law, alleging family claim supersedes commercial auction rights, demanding return of the vehicle commonly known as Sugar and Spice Mobile Bakery within 30 days or legal action would be initiated. Sarah read it a third time, slower, each word landing like a separate blow. The truck. Rose's nephew wanted the truck back. Everything she had built, the permits she had earned, the customers she had won, the business she had created from nothing but desperation and determination. All of it predicated on ownership that was now being challenged. She sat down on the asphalt, not choosing to sit, just finding herself suddenly unable to stand. The letter in her hands, the morning cold seeping through her jeans, the weight of impossibility settling onto shoulders that had already been carrying too much. Gloria found her there, came out for the morning routine and found Sarah sitting in the parking lot staring at paper like it contained a death sentence. She read the letter, made a sound that contained both profanity and prayer in proportions that only Gloria could manage. That boy, I remember him, came around after Maggie got sick, said he was handling her affairs, looked at me like I was part of the inventory instead of someone who had known his aunt for 20 years. He wants the truck. He wants to matter. Gloria's voice carried the certainty of someone who had watched many people confuse those two things. There is a difference. Maggie left the truck in storage because she could not bear to sell it herself, but she did not leave it to him. That tells you something. The mediation was scheduled for 3 weeks later. 3 weeks of waiting, 3 weeks of wondering, 3 weeks of serving cupcakes to customers who did not know that everything they were buying from might be taken away. Sarah prepared, gathered every document she could find, every permit, every inspection report, every receipt for parts and repairs, the mechanical journal Walt had helped her understand, Rose's recipe notebook, the photos she had taken during the restoration. Evidence that this was more than property. This was resurrection. The borough office conference room was small and beige and designed for conflict, fluorescent lights that buzzed slightly, a table too large for the space, chairs that encouraged sitting forward because leaning back meant touching walls. Sarah arrived early, set up her documents in neat piles, tried to look like someone who belonged in rooms where decisions were made. Nathan arrived exactly on time, his lawyer beside him, both in suits that cost more than Sarah's van. They carried briefcases that probably contained more documentation than she could produce if given a year to gather it. Nathan was 42. She had looked him up. Harvard Law, partnership track at a Pittsburgh firm, the kind of success that came from preparation and privilege, and the particular confidence of never having been truly desperate. He did not look at her when he entered. Looked at the room, the table, his lawyer, the space itself as if assessing its worthiness to contain him. Then he pulled out photos. Rose at the truck's grand opening in 1994. Younger, healthier, smiling with the particular joy of someone who had built something from nothing. The truck bright and new behind her. The cupcake mascot not yet googly-eyed, but already ridiculous. Rose and Nathan at his law school graduation. Her pride evident even through the faded Polaroid colors. His arm around her, both of them happy in a way that felt like memory of another world. Rose and a small boy who must have been young Nathan, eating cupcakes beside the truck, both covered in frosting, both laughing at something the camera had not captured. My aunt raised me after my parents died. Nathan's voice was controlled, professional, but something underneath threatened to break through. Strain showing at the edges. This truck is all I have left of her. I was planning to restore it, donate it to the Historical Society, keep her memory alive the way she deserved. His lawyer presented the legal argument. State law regarding estate procedures, the specific statutes that govern property disposition, the irregularities in how the storage facility had handled the liquidation, family claims and their priority over commercial transactions, a wall of precedent built brick by brick with citations and case numbers. Sarah listened, understanding enough to know she was outmatched, understanding that law was a language she had never learned to speak. Then it was her turn. She spread her documents across the table, permits arranged chronologically, repair logs organized by system, photos showing the truck's transformation from neglected relic to functioning business. Your aunt left instructions. Sarah's voice came out steadier than she felt. For whoever found the truck. She wanted it used, not preserved, not donated, used. She pulled out Rose's notebook, the pink spiral with "Do Not Open" written on the cover. The message inside that had changed everything. She prepared for this. Knew someone would find it, knew they would need guidance. She left recipes, repair logs, detailed instructions for every system, even a costume. Sarah paused, letting the words settle. She did not leave these things for family. She left them for whoever needed them most. Nathan's lawyer started to object, the reflexive response of legal training to emotional arguments. But Sarah was already opening the box she had brought. 4 cupcakes, made that morning with Rose's recipes. Cinnamon sky swirl with its perfect spiral of spiced buttercream. Chocolate thunder, dark and rich and exactly right. Vanilla bean classic, simple and elevated. Lemon burst, bright and tangy and apparently meaningful in ways Sarah was about to discover. These are your aunt's recipes. I followed them exactly. Every measurement, every technique, everything she wrote down because she wanted someone to continue what she started. The mediator tried the cinnamon sky swirl, her expression shifting from professional neutrality to genuine surprise. This is excellent. Nathan's lawyer took the chocolate thunder, ate it with the mechanical efficiency of someone doing something because it was expected. His expression revealed nothing. Nathan reached for the lemon burst, his hand moving before thought could stop it. The automatic gesture of someone responding to something deeper than decision. He bit into it. He stopped. The room went quiet, the fluorescent lights buzzing, the distant sound of someone walking past in the hallway. Everything else suspended. Nathan's face changed, the professional composure cracking like ice under sudden pressure. Something raw emerging from underneath, something that looked like grief made fresh again. He closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. She made these for my birthday, every year, from the time I was 5 until I left for college. This tastes exactly like hers. His voice broke on the last word. Decades of missing her compressed into a single bite. The taste of childhood. The taste of being loved. The taste of everything he had lost when she got sick, and then worse, and then gone. Sarah waited, understanding that anything she said would be intrusion, that this moment belonged to Nathan and Rose and the connection between them that a cupcake had somehow restored. The silence stretched, Nathan looking at the half-eaten cupcake in his hand, at the photos he had brought, at the woman across the table who had somehow recreated something he thought was gone forever. Why do you need this truck? The question came out rough, scraped raw by whatever he was feeling. Sarah considered softening the edges, making her situation sound less desperate than it was. Then decided that Rose deserved honesty, that Nathan deserved honesty, that the only way through this was truth even when truth was uncomfortable. I was living in a van with my daughter. We were homeless for 3 months. I spent my last $300 on this truck because a dog sneezed on a flyer and I had run out of better options. This truck is the only chance I have to build something different, to give my daughter a life that does not smell like desperation. The words hung in the beige conference room, raw and real and impossible to argue against. Nathan was quiet for what felt like hours, processing, remembering, connecting pieces of a story he had not known he was part of. Aunt Maggie grew up in a trailer park. Did you know that? Talked about it sometimes when I was young. How poor they were. How hungry she remembered being. She said sugar and spice was her escape from poverty. Her proof that starting with nothing did not mean ending with nothing. He looked at his lawyer, something passing between them that Sarah could not read. I am dropping the claim. The lawyer's expression suggested professional malpractice, suggested hours of preparation wasted, suggested fees that would not be collected. But he knew better than to argue with a client who had already decided. who had decided for reasons that had nothing to do with law and everything to do with lemon burst cupcakes. Nathan turned back to Sarah. Two conditions, his voice steadier now, the professional returning, but something softer underneath it. First, put her photo in the truck, somewhere visible. Let people know who started this. Sarah nodded. Second, once a year, April 14th, her birthday, make lemon burst cupcakes. Remember her. Keep her alive in whatever way you can. I promise. Nathan reached into his briefcase, pulled out a folder thick with paper, slid it across the table. Her business records, customer list from the 90s, supplier contacts, tax documents, everything she kept. If you are going to continue her legacy, then do it right. Do not waste what she built. They shook hands, his grip firm, his eyes still wet, a contract sealed in ways that had nothing to do with law and everything to do with loss and hope and the strange connections that form between strangers. Nathan left, his lawyer following. The conference room suddenly empty in a way that felt like aftermath. Gloria was waiting outside, had been waiting the entire time. Her face asking questions, her voice did not. He dropped it. Gloria nodded, unsurprised, as if outcomes like this were simply what happened when people finally listened to what mattered. Maggie always said that boy had more heart than his fancy education let him show. Nice to know she was right about one more thing. They walked back to the parking lot together, to the pink truck that was still there, still waiting, still hers in ways that were now both legal and earned. Rick Tanner's truck was gone, moved on to some other location, some other battle, some other competitor to overwhelm. Sarah did not know if he would be back, did not know if the fight was over or just paused. But for now, for this moment, she had won. The truck was hers. The recipes were hers. The legacy was hers to carry forward. She climbed into the driver's seat, looked at the photo of Rose she had taped to the dashboard that morning. A woman smiling, holding cupcakes, believing in something ridiculous and beautiful. Thank you. Sarah whispered it to the empty truck, to Rose, to whatever combination of chance and choice had brought her here. For believing in me before you knew who I was. The engine turned over. The generator hummed to life. The oven began to warm. Tomorrow, there would be cupcakes to make, customers to serve, a business to build. But tonight, Sarah drove the truck, actually drove it, for the first time on public roads, legal and registered and hers. The pink paint caught the streetlights. The googly-eyed cupcake grinned at the darkness. Gerald sat on the dashboard, keeping watch over everything. Lily was asleep in the van with Gloria. Biscuit probably dreaming of rubber chickens and adventures yet to come. Sarah drove through Millbrook, past the empty storefronts and the struggling businesses in the town that had been dying for decades. She drove past the old steel mill where the festival would happen in a few weeks, past the corner of Main Street where maybe someday she might have a permanent location. She drove through the night in a pink bakery truck that smelled like cinnamon and possibility. And somewhere, Rose was watching, proud of what her truck had become. Proud of who had found it, proud of the legacy that would not end with her death, but would continue forward through the lives of everyone it touched. Some bets paid off. Some chances led somewhere real. Some dreams survived long enough to become other people's dreams. This was one of them. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning while Sarah was elbow-deep in flour and possibility. Her phone buzzed against the metal counter of the truck. She almost ignored it. Almost let it go to the growing pile of notifications she never had time to check. But something made her look. Millbrook Food Festival, annual event, 30 vendors, 2,000 expected attendees. Vendor application now open, fee $150. Sarah stared at the screen, flour dust settling on the glass like snow on a window she could not quite see through. $150. That was groceries for 2 weeks. That was gas for the van. That was the margin between making it and not making it in a world where margins had become everything. But 2,000 attendees. 30 vendors meant competition, but also legitimacy. A festival meant exposure beyond the parking lot, beyond the small circle of regulars who had found her through word of mouth and Megan's blog posts. She was still staring at the phone when Walt appeared. His boots crunching on gravel announced his presence before his voice did. "What are you looking at like it owes you money?" Sarah turned the phone toward him. Let him read. Watched his weathered face process the information with the same methodical attention he gave to engine diagnostics. Maggie did festivals. His voice carried the weight of memory. Always her biggest sales days. used to come back exhausted and happy. Said there was something about feeding a crowd that felt different than feeding individuals. You think I should do it? I think you should stop asking me what you should do and start trusting what you already know. He walked away before she could respond, which was his way. Deliver the important thing, then disappear before the conversation could become complicated. That evening, Gloria found Sarah sitting on the truck's back bumper, calculator in hand, numbers that refused to add up no matter how many times she ran them. 150 for the vendor fee. Ingredients for 300 cupcakes would cost another 200. If she sold everything at 350 each, she would gross over $1,000. But if the weather turned bad, if people did not show up, if her cupcakes sat unsold in the October chill while other vendors captured the crowd, she would lose everything she had scraped together over the past weeks. Gloria sat down beside her, the older woman moving with the careful deliberation of someone whose joints had opinions about sudden movements. Festival's 3 weeks away. Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. I already paid your vendor fee. Gloria's tone was matter of fact, like she was discussing the weather or the price of milk. Megan is doing a preview piece on her blog. Walt is building you a display table. Helen is working on a special frosting recipe. Sarah turned to stare at her, the words not quite computing. You, what? Did I stutter? Gloria's eyes held that particular mix of sternness and warmth that Sarah had come to recognize as her version of affection. You have been killing yourself for weeks, working doubles, sleeping in that van, feeding your daughter hope when you barely have any left for yourself. The least we can do is buy you a ticket to the dance. Gloria, I cannot let you. You are not letting me do anything. I am doing it because I want to, because this town has been dying for 30 years and you are the first person I have seen in a decade who is actually trying to build something instead of just watching it all fall apart. She stood, brushed invisible dust from her skirt. Festival is October 17th, 3 weeks to prepare. I suggest you stop calculating and start baking. The next 3 weeks became a blur of flour and focus and the particular exhaustion that comes from working towards something that matters. Sarah practiced high-volume production, learning the rhythm of the commercial oven, how many batches she could run simultaneously, how to time the cooling so frosting would not melt, how to package efficiently without sacrificing presentation. She created a festival-exclusive flavor, something special that would make people remember. She called it Maggie's Remembrance. The lemon burst recipe from Rose's notebook elevated with edible gold sprinkles that caught the light like tiny promises. The cost per cupcake was higher, but the impact was worth it. Every bite would be a tribute to the woman who had made all of this possible. Lily designed a new signage, spending hours with markers and poster board, creating something that looked like a child had made it, because a child had made it. And that authenticity turned out to be more valuable than any professional design could have been. Walt built a display table from plywood and determination. The construction was simple but solid, like everything Walt made, built to last, built to work, built without apology for its lack of elegance. Helen developed a cream cheese frosting variant that held up better in cold weather, explaining the chemistry of fat molecules and temperature stability, while Sarah tried to keep up with both the science and the actual frosting production. The night before the festival, Sarah could not sleep. She lay in the van listening to Lily breathe, listening to Biscuit snore, listening to the sounds of a Pennsylvania night that did not care whether tomorrow went well or catastrophically wrong. 300 cupcakes waited in coolers, packed in careful rows, each one representing hope converted into flour and sugar and butter and eggs. Each one a small bet placed on a future that might or might not arrive. She had been making bets like this for months now, small ones and large ones. The auction, the truck, the repairs, the permits, each bet building on the one before, creating a structure of faith and effort that either meant something or meant nothing depending on what tomorrow brought. Somewhere in the darkness, Lily stirred. Mom. The word came out soft, blurred by sleep. Yes, sweetheart. Is tomorrow going to be okay? Sarah reached over, found her daughter's hand in the darkness. I think so. I hope so. I hope so too. Then after a pause, but if it is not okay, we will figure it out. We always figure it out. Sarah felt tears threatening, pushed them back through force of will. Yeah, we always figure it out. She did not sleep that night, but somehow that felt appropriate. Some vigils were meant to be kept. 4 in the morning arrived with Sarah already standing in the truck, oven preheating, First batch of fresh cupcakes going in to supplement the ones already made. The festival started at 10. She wanted everything perfect. Lily woke at 6, appeared in the truck doorway wearing her cupcake costume like armor. Face serious with the weight of responsibility she had assigned herself. I am ready to dance. Not yet, sweetheart. We have 4 hours. I know, I am practicing being ready. Walt arrived at 7 with his truck, the flatbed that would transport sugar and spice to the festival grounds because Sarah still could not legally drive the bakery truck on public roads. The registration had finally come through, but the inspection was scheduled for next week. One more obstacle that refused to align with her timeline. They loaded carefully. Walt directing with minimal words and maximum efficiency. The display table went first, then the coolers of cupcakes, then the signage Lily had made, then the supplies, then finally the truck itself, winched up onto the flatbed like a pink whale being transported to a new ocean. The drive to the festival grounds took 20 minutes. Sarah followed in the van, watching the bakery truck ahead of her. That ridiculous pink vehicle with its googly-eyed cupcake mascot swaying slightly with every turn. This was it. This was the moment when theory became reality, when all the practice and preparation either paid off or did not. The festival grounds occupied the parking lot of the old Millbrook steel mill. The mill itself had been closed for 40 years, but the lot remained. Acres of cracked asphalt that once held cars belonging to workers who built things. Now it would hold vendors selling food to people looking for a reason to feel good about their town. They arrived at 8. Setup took an hour. Walt positioned the truck with geometric precision. Display table out front, signage arranged to catch eyes from multiple angles. Cupcakes transferred from coolers to display cases with the care of handling precious artifacts. By 9:30, the other vendors had arrived. Food trucks and tent setups and folding tables covered with everything from barbecue to kettle corn to hand-dipped chocolates. The smell of cooking filled the October air, competing aromas creating a symphony of temptation. Sarah looked at her setup, at the pink truck gleaming in the morning light, at Lily practicing her dance moves beside the display table, at Biscuit sitting attentively with Gerald clutched in his mouth like a talisman against uncertainty. 10 o'clock. The festival opened, and the crowd came. Not a trickle, not a gradual build, a wave of humanity that swept across the festival grounds like water released from a dam. Families with children pointing at balloons and begging for everything they saw. Couples holding hands and pretending they were just there for the food when really they were there for each other. Groups of teenagers looking for content to post because everything worth doing was also worth documenting. Elderly pairs moving slowly but deliberately from vendor to vendor, comparing prices, discussing options, taking their time because they had learned that rushing through life meant missing the best parts. The October sun broke through the morning clouds, casting golden light across the old steel mill parking lot that had seen so much history, so many workers coming and going, so many lives built on the foundation of labor that this town had once provided. Now it held something different. Not industry, but community. Not production, but celebration. And they came to sugar and spice. Something about the pink truck drew them in. Maybe it was the color, bright and defiant against the gray October landscape. Maybe it was Lily already dancing in her cupcake costume, spinning and twirling like a small pink tornado of joy. Maybe it was the smell of fresh baked cupcakes drifting across the festival grounds, calling to people the way the smell of home calls to travelers who have been away too long. Or maybe it was something else entirely, something that could not be measured or explained. The particular energy of someone betting everything on a dream. The visible evidence of hope taking physical form. The line formed within minutes. 40 people deep before Sarah had finished her first transaction. Something about the pink truck, about Lily in her cupcake costume beginning her sprinkle dance, about the sheer absurdity and sincerity of the whole operation. It drew people in. Sarah worked the register. Walt handled packaging with surprising dexterity. Lily danced and talked and charmed customers in ways that no adult could replicate. Biscuit sat beside the display table looking noble and fluffy and exactly like the kind of dog people wanted to photograph with their purchases. By noon, they had sold 150 cupcakes, the display cases emptying faster than Sarah had anticipated. By 2 o'clock, they had sold 250. Sarah was running out of certain flavors. The Maggie's Remembrance had been the first to go. Every single gold-sprinkled lemon cupcake claimed by customers who seemed to understand they were buying something more than dessert. By 3 o'clock, Sarah was in the truck, baking fresh batches, working the oven at maximum capacity while Walt and Lily held down the front line. The smell of baking cupcakes mixing with the festival chaos outside, creating something that felt like possibility taking physical form. The fresh batch, 80 cupcakes produced under pressure, came out perfect, golden and domed and ready for frosting that Sarah applied with hands that had done this enough times now to move without conscious thought. By 5:30, they were sold out, 330 cupcakes. Every single one purchased by someone who had chosen sugar and spice from among 30 vendors. Every single one now somewhere in Millbrook being eaten or saved or shared with someone who had not been able to make it to the festival. Sarah sat on the truck's back bumper, hands cramping, feet aching, back screaming from 8 hours of standing and bending and working without pause. The late afternoon light fell golden across the festival grounds, vendors packing up around her, the crowds thinning as people headed home with their purchases and their memories. Lily had collapsed onto Walt's jacket spread across the ground, still wearing her cupcake costume, face peaceful in exhaustion, the kind of tired that children wear well because they have not yet learned to resist it. Biscuit lay beside her. Gerald clutched between paws like a comfort object. His tail gave one lazy wag when Sarah looked at him, but he was too tired for more. Walt stood nearby, arms crossed, face unreadable as always, but something in his posture suggested satisfaction. "How much?" Sarah's voice came out hoarse, throat raw from calling out flavors and thank yous and have a good days for 8 straight hours. Walt pulled a slip of paper from his pocket, the tally he had been keeping all day. 330 sold, 350 each, 1155 gross. Sarah did the math automatically. Ingredient cost around 200. Vendor fee covered by Gloria. Profit of roughly $950. In one day, 8 hours of work, more money than she had seen in months. She started laughing, the sound escaping before she could stop it. Not because it was funny, but because the alternative was crying and she was too tired for tears. "We did it. You did it." Walt's correction was gentle but firm. "We just showed up. You built this." A voice interrupted before Sarah could respond. Male, professional, carrying the particular energy of someone who had been watching and waiting for the right moment to approach. "Excuse me, are you the owner of Sugar and Spice?" Sarah looked up. A man stood there, 50s, business casual in a way that suggested he wore suits on weekdays, but wanted to blend in at weekend festivals. He held a business card between 2 fingers, like a credential. "I am Jeff Hammond, property manager for Millbrook Downtown Plaza. I saw your operation today. Impressive." Sarah stood, legs protesting, extended her hand automatically. "Sarah Mitchell, thank you. I manage retail space on Main Street. Corner spot just opened up. Previous tenant relocated. High foot traffic. Great visibility." He paused, the pause of someone delivering a pitch they had rehearsed. "I am wondering if you might be interested in a permanent location." The words hit Sarah like cold water. A permanent location, not a parking lot, not borrowed space behind a grocery store. An actual address, an actual place where customers could find her without having to ask Gloria or check the blog. "How much monthly?" $250. Prime corner. Includes utilities. 30-day rolling lease initially. Option for annual after 6 months if things work out. $250 a month. With the profit from today alone, she could cover that. If she could replicate today's success even partially. If customers kept coming. If the momentum built instead of faded. But that was the question. Was today a fluke? Festival energy that would not translate to regular weekdays? Or was it the beginning of something sustainable? "I need to think about it." Jeff nodded, pulled out another business card. "Take my card. Offer stands through end of month." He glanced at the pink truck, at the empty display cases, at Lily still sleeping in her cupcake costume. "You built something special here. Would be nice to see it have a real home." He walked away, disappeared into the thinning festival crowd. Sarah looked at the card in her hand. Jeff Hammond, property manager. Millbrook Downtown Plaza. A phone number. An email address. A door that might open onto something real. Or might open onto another way to fail. 3 days later, Sarah still had not called. She lay awake in the van each night, running calculations. Building spreadsheets on the library computer during the day, tracking the sales from the parking lot, projecting what Main Street might bring, what the cost would be, what could go wrong. The math worked if nothing catastrophic happened. The math collapsed if Lily got sick, if the truck broke down, if Rick decided to follow her to Main Street and steal her customers again, if any of the 1,000 variables that lived in the space between planning and reality shifted the wrong direction. Lily found her on the third night, sitting in the truck, staring at nothing, calculator in hand that she had stopped using hours ago. "Mom, what are you doing?" "Thinking." "About what?" "About whether to be brave or smart." Lily climbed up into the truck, settled beside Sarah on the bench seat, her small body warm against Sarah's side. "Can you be both?" Sarah smiled despite herself. "Sometimes. But sometimes they are different things. Sometimes being brave means doing something that might not be smart, and sometimes being smart means not doing something that would be brave." Lily considered this with the seriousness she brought to all important questions. "Are you scared about the Main Street thing?" "Terrified." Lily nodded, like this was the answer she expected. "Then you should do it." Sarah turned to look at her daughter, at this 8-year-old who had lived through more uncertainty in the past year than most children faced in a decade. "Why do you say that?" "Because being scared means it matters." Lily's voice carried wisdom that should not have fit in such a small person. If it did not matter, you would not be scared. So being scared means it is important, and important things are worth being brave for. Sarah felt something shift in her chest, some final resistance giving way. "When did you get so smart?" "I was always smart. You were just too busy being scared to notice." Sarah laughed, pulled Lily close. "You are absolutely right. So you are going to do it." "Yeah, I am going to do it." She called Jeff Hammond the next morning, signed the papers that afternoon. Sugar and Spice would have a real address, a permanent home, an existence independent of borrowed spaces and charity. The move happened on a Thursday. Walt's friend with the flatbed hauled the truck through downtown Millbrook while residents stopped on sidewalks to watch. Some waved, some pulled out phones to record, some just stared, surprised that their dying town had suddenly acquired something pink and cheerful and determinedly alive. Main Street had not seen anything new in years. The storefronts that remained open had remained open through inertia more than intention, their owners holding on because letting go felt worse than continuing. The empty spaces between them stood as monuments to businesses that had given up. Windows soaped over or boarded up, signs removed, leaving only shadows where letters used to be. But now there was this, a pink bakery truck with a grinning cupcake mascot being hauled down the center of town like a parade float that had gotten lost and ended up somewhere it was desperately needed. People came out of shops to watch. Mrs. Patterson from the pharmacy, Tom Chen from the hardware store, old Frank Gillespie, who had owned the barbershop for 53 years and had seen everything this town had been through. They stood on the sidewalk and watched the pink truck pass, and something in their faces shifted. Something that looked like recognition, like remembering what it felt like to believe in things. The corner spot on Main Street was perfect. Glass windows that let light flood in, foot traffic from the offices nearby, students from the community college walking past between classes, shoppers heading to the hardware store and the pharmacy and the few remaining retail establishments that had not yet surrendered to the town's slow decline. The truck settled into its new position like it had always belonged there, the pink and white stripes catching the afternoon sun, the googly-eyed cupcake mascot grinning at everyone who passed. And people came, not the festival crowds, those were special occasions, but steady traffic, regular customers, office workers who discovered that a $3.50 cupcake made lunch breaks better, students who found that the pink truck was a good place to meet between classes, families who made Sugar and Spice a weekend destination, a reason to come downtown, a reason to believe that Millbrook might have a future after all. The numbers climbed, $400 on the first day, then $550, then $600, stabilizing around $700 as word spread and routines established, and the pink truck became a landmark instead of a curiosity. Sarah paid Gloria back, every cent plus extra, paid Walt ahead of schedule, opened a savings account she called the apartment fund, deposited $300 the first week, then $300 more the next, building towards something that looked like stability. 23 days after the move to Main Street, Sarah woke in the van to find Lily burning. The fever had come on overnight, the way fevers do with children, one moment fine, the next moment radiating heat like a small furnace that had lost all temperature regulation. 103 degrees, Sarah read the thermometer 3 times, hoping the number would change. It did not change. The clinic diagnosed a viral infection. Rest and fluids in time. 3 days minimum before Lily would be well enough to return to normal activities. 3 days. Such a small number. Such an impossible span. 3 days without Lily meant no sprinkle dance. No cupcake costume ambassador charming customers. No 8-year-old energy that had become as much a part of the sugar and spice experience as the cupcakes themselves. But that was the smaller problem. 3 days meant Sarah could not simultaneously nurse a sick child and run a business that required 16-hour days. Could not be in the van monitoring fever and in the truck serving customers. Could not split herself into the multiple people this situation demanded. She sat in the van that morning, Lily sleeping fitfully beside her, face flushed and strange with illness. Biscuit pressed against Lily's side like he was trying to absorb the sickness into himself. The math was brutal. Close for 3 days and lose the momentum she had built. Lose customers to other options. Lose the reputation for reliability that was just beginning to form. Maybe lose everything if 3 days stretched longer. But Lily needed her. Lily came first. Had always come first. Would always come first. That was not a question. She was reaching for her phone to post a closure notice when Gloria appeared. The older woman knocking on the van's window with the particular authority of someone who had already made decisions and was merely informing others. Lily stays in my apartment. I will watch her. You work. Sarah opened the door. Protest already forming. Gloria, I cannot ask you to. You're not asking. I am telling. Gloria's voice carried no room for argument. Now hand me that child before I decide to get bossy. But she needs medicine and soup and rest, all of which I have provided to 5 children and 11 grandchildren. I know how to handle a sick 8-year-old. The question is whether you know how to accept help when you need it. Sarah looked at her daughter, at this woman who had been a constant presence through all of this, at the offer being extended without expectation of return. Thank you. Thank me by selling enough cupcakes to pay your rent. Now go. Lily transferred to Gloria's apartment above the grocery store, still in her cupcake costume because she refused to take it off even while sick, claiming it had protective powers. Gloria did not argue, just tucked blankets around the foam and sprinkles and set about the business of healing with the efficiency of someone who had been doing this for decades. Sarah went to the truck, opened for business, waited for customers to appear. And then something unexpected happened. Walt showed up at 9, took position at the register without being asked, handling transactions with minimal words and maximum efficiency. When Sarah tried to thank him, he just grunted and pointed at the next customer. Helen arrived at 10, started baking without instruction. Her chemistry teacher, Precision, producing perfect batches while she talked about her grandson's soccer achievements in the weather and nothing important at all. 3 regular customers appeared at 11. People whose names Sarah barely knew, whose faces she recognized from daily purchases, but whose lives were mysteries. They asked what they could do to help, said the cupcakes had made their lunch breaks better, and they wanted to return the favor. Started cleaning and organizing and doing the small tasks that accumulated when you were too busy serving customers to do anything else. By noon, Sarah realized what was happening. The community was building itself, not because she had asked, not because she had planned, not because she had done anything to deserve it, but because something about sugar and spice had created connections that ran deeper than the transactions. These were not investors looking for returns, not volunteers fulfilling obligations, not people helping because they expected something back. They were neighbors, fellow travelers in a town that had given them little reason to hope, but had not quite managed to crush their capacity for caring. Walt at the register, his gruff efficiency hiding something softer underneath. The way he said thank you to each customer, like the words cost him something, but were worth paying. Helen at the ovens, her chemistry teacher, Precision, mixing with a warmth that had always been there but had waited for the right occasion to emerge. The way she explained things to anyone who asked, like teaching, was what she was born to do, and retirement had just been a pause between lessons. The regular customers whose names Sarah was only now learning. Margaret, who worked at the insurance office across the street. David, who delivered mail on this route. The young couple, James and Patricia, who came every day for 2 cupcakes and stayed to talk like they had found something here they could not find elsewhere. People showing up because they wanted to, investing their time because the pink truck with its ridiculous cupcake mascot represented something Millbrook needed. Hope, maybe, or just novelty in a town that had not seen anything new in a decade. Something worth protecting, something worth participating in. Sarah watched them all, these people she had known for weeks or months, but was only now truly seeing. Each one carrying their own struggles, their own stories, their own reasons for being here that had nothing to do with cupcakes and everything to do with the community. This was what Maggie had built, not just a business, not just a truck, but a gathering place, a reason for people to show up, a reminder that they were not alone, even when it felt like they were. Sarah worked through the day, then the next day, then the next, each morning beginning with a check on Lily at Gloria's apartment, finding her daughter a little better each time, the fever receding, the energy returning, the unstoppable force that was an 8-year-old reasserting itself against the temporary setback of illness. On day 3, Lily's fever broke overnight. By morning, she was sitting up, demanding pancakes and asking when she could go back to the truck. Gloria called Sarah with the news. Your small creature is recovered. She is also extremely bossy about breakfast requirements. Please come collect her before she reorganizes my spice cabinet. Sarah laughed, the first real laugh in 3 days. On my way, she picked Lily up, found her daughter already dressed in the cupcake costume, ready to return to duty, face thinner from 3 days of soup and crackers, but eyes bright with the particular energy of someone who had been resting against their will and was ready to make up for lost time. They walked to Main Street together, Biscuit bounding ahead, Gerald in his mouth as always. The truck came into view, the small crowd already forming for the lunch rush. And then Lily started walking faster, then running, breaking away from Sarah and sprinting toward the truck in her foam cupcake costume, arms flapping, sprinkles bouncing. The customers saw her coming. Someone pointed, someone else laughed, and then something remarkable happened. They applauded, actually applauded, clapping as Lily reached the truck, cheering for the return of the dancing cupcake girl who had been missing for 3 days, celebrating her recovery like she was a returning hero instead of just a kid who had beaten a fever. Lily stopped, surprised by the reception. Then her face split into the biggest smile Sarah had ever seen. She started dancing, right there, without music, without prompting. The sprinkle dance she had invented and perfected over weeks of practice, spinning and twirling and being exactly who she was without apology or hesitation. The crowd loved it. Phones came out to record. More people stopped to see what the commotion was about. The line for cupcakes grew longer. Sarah stood at the edge of it all, watching her daughter dance, watching strangers become an audience, become a community, feeling something in her chest that she could not quite name. That day's sales hit 550. Not the highest, but it felt like more. It felt like proof that what they had built mattered to people beyond just herself and Lily. That evening, after the truck was closed and Lily was asleep in the van, and the October night had settled cold and clear over Millbrook, Sarah decided to do a deep clean of the truck interior. She had been meaning to do it for weeks. The corners accumulated debris. The spaces behind equipment gathered dust. The places that were hard to reach became harder to remember. She started with the obvious areas: the floor under the display counter, the shelves that held supplies, the gaps between the oven and the wall. Then she moved to the harder spaces: the bracket that held the commercial oven to the truck wall, the narrow gap behind it that was nearly impossible to access without removing the entire unit. She was reaching into that gap with a cloth when her fingers found something. Not dust, not debris. Paper. An envelope. She pulled it out carefully, angling her flashlight to see what she had found. The envelope was white, slightly yellowed with age, and on the front in handwriting she recognized immediately. Sarah, not future owner, not whoever finds this, not the next person to take care of this truck. Her name, her actual name, written in Rose's handwriting. Sarah sat down hard on the truck floor, heart slamming against her ribs, mind refusing to process what she was seeing. This was impossible. Maggie had died before Sarah bought the truck, before Sarah knew it existed, before Sarah was anything more than a desperate woman living in a parking lot with no plan and no future. How could there be an envelope with her name on it? She turned it over in her hands, checking for some explanation, some indication that this was addressed to a different Sarah, some evidence that she was misunderstanding. But the handwriting was unmistakably Rose's, the same loops and curves from the recipe notebook, the same particular way of forming letters that Sarah had studied for weeks while learning to recreate Rose's cupcakes. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded twice, covered in the handwriting that had become as familiar as her own. Dear Sarah, if you found this, then you did not quit. You fought. You won. I am so proud of you, whoever you are. Wait, why does this say Sarah? Let me explain. I watched you, not in a creepy way. The storage facility had cameras, security feeds that my nephew Nathan could access. When I got too sick to work on the truck myself, I asked him to check those feeds whenever someone showed interest in Unit 23A. Most people opened the door, saw the mess, saw the work required, and left. You opened the door, saw the mess, and your eyes lit up, like you had found treasure instead of a problem, like you saw possibility instead of obstacles. I watched you bid your last dollars on something you could not see. I watched you refuse to give up when the man in the expensive jacket tried to outbid you. I watched you run to your van and dig through coins to pay the towing fee. And I knew you were the one. I asked Nathan to let the auction proceed, asked him not to interfere, not to bid on my behalf, not to save the truck for family. Because the truck was never meant for family. It was meant for whoever needed it most, whoever would fight for it, whoever would see what I saw 30 years ago when I was broke and angry and scared and someone gave me a chance I did not deserve. This truck saved me Sarah, gave me purpose when I had none, gave me income when I had nothing, gave me a reason to get up every morning and make something beautiful for strangers who became friends, who became community. I spent 30 years paying forward the kindness that woman showed me. Not to her, she passed long before I could repay her, but forward, to everyone who needed it, every struggling person I hired, every family supplier I bought from, every customer I gave the benefit of the doubt. Now it is your turn. The truck is not just a business, it is a reminder that we all need second chances, that the world is not as cold as it seems, that someone somewhere is willing to take a risk on you even when you have given them no reason to. You took your chance, Sarah. You fought for it. You earned it. Now give someone else theirs. Hire the person no one else will hire. Trust the customer who looks like they cannot afford to pay. Give more than you take. Build more than you use. That is how legacies survive. Not by preserving them in museums, but by living them forward. I believe in you. I have never met you, but I believe in you. With love and flower power. Margaret Maggie Holloway. P.S. The rubber chicken is named Gerald. Do not ask why, just love him. He has seen things. Sarah read the letter 3 times, each time finding new words to focus on, new sentences that hit differently, new meanings emerging from between the lines. Maggie had watched her, had seen her at the auction, had chosen not to intervene because she wanted Sarah to have the truck, had believed in her before they ever met, had left this letter hidden where only someone who cared enough to deep clean would ever find it. The tears came then, flowing freely down her face and onto the letter and onto the floor of the truck that had become so much more than a vehicle. Maggie had given her a chance. Gloria had given her space. Walt had given her skills. Helen had given her knowledge. The community had given her support. And now Maggie was asking her to continue the cycle, to take the chance she had been given and transform it into chances for others. Not repaying, that was impossible. You could not repay people who gave without expectation of return. But paying forward, that was something else entirely. Sarah sat in the truck for a long time, holding the letter, feeling the weight of what it meant, what it asked, what it promised. She had come to Millbrook with nothing, a van, a daughter, a dome, 17 cents in desperation. Now she had something worth having, something worth protecting, something worth sharing. The question was whether she was brave enough to do what Maggie asked, whether she could open herself to the risk of trusting others the way others had trusted her. She looked at the letter one more time, at the words written by a woman she would never meet, a woman who had seen something in her through a security camera, who had believed before belief was earned, who had given without knowing if the gift would be received. Now it is your turn. Sarah folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the envelope, tucked the envelope into her jacket pocket close to her heart. She did not know yet what paying forward would look like, did not know who would need chances or how she would provide them, did not know any of the specifics that would eventually become clear. But she knew she would do it, knew with certainty that felt like the first solid thing she had felt in months. Maggie's legacy would not end in a storage unit, would not fade into memory and dust. It would live through Sarah, through whoever Sarah helped, through the chain of chances that stretched backward into history and forward into possibility. She climbed out of the truck, locked it carefully, walked back to the van where Lily slept with Biscuit curled at her feet. Tomorrow there would be cupcakes to make, customers to serve, a business to run. But tonight Sarah lay awake, not calculating, not planning, not worrying about what might go wrong, just thinking about what might go right, about the person out there somewhere who needed a chance, about the moment when she would recognize them the way Maggie had recognized her, about the day when she would write her own letter, hide it somewhere in the truck, wait for the next Sarah to find it. The chain would continue, the chances would multiply, the legacy would live. That was how it worked. That was how it had always worked. Someone gives, someone receives, someone passes forward, and the world becomes slightly less cold, slightly more possible, slightly more worth fighting for. Sarah closed her eyes, let exhaustion finally claim her. And somewhere in her dreams, Maggie smiled. It had worked. The bet she placed on a stranger, the letter she hid for whoever proved worthy. It had worked. Now it was Sarah's turn. 3 months passed like water finding its level. The frantic, desperate energy of survival slowly transformed into something that resembled routine, something that almost felt like stability. Sugar and Spice occupied its corner of Main Street like it had always belonged there. The pink truck with its googly-eyed cupcake mascot had become as much a part of Millbrook's landscape as the old brick buildings and the empty storefronts, and the particular quality of light that fell across Pennsylvania towns in winter. The Christmas season had come and gone. Sarah had created special flavors for the holidays, peppermint dreams and gingerbread wishes, and something she called Maggie's Winter Miracle that was essentially the lemon burst recipe with white chocolate chips and edible snowflake sprinkles. They had sold out every day for 3 weeks straight. Now it was January, the deep quiet of a New Year settling over the town, the holiday rush replaced by the steady rhythm of regular customers and familiar faces and the particular comfort of a business that had found its footing. $700 a day. That was the average now. Some days more, some days less. But the line on the graph pointed upward, and the numbers in the savings account grew larger, and the impossible dream of a real apartment had transformed into an actual plan with actual timelines. Sarah had paid off Gloria completely, had paid Walt ahead of schedule with interest he tried to refuse and she insisted on providing. Had opened a second savings account she called the emergency fund because she had learned that emergencies did not ask permission before arriving. The apartment fund had grown to $2,400, enough for first month's rent and last month's rent and the security deposit that landlords required as proof that you were the kind of person who could be trusted with keys and responsibilities. The apartment above Gloria's grocery store had been empty for months. 2 bedrooms, a bathroom with an actual bathtub that Lily discussed with religious fervor whenever the subject arose. A kitchen where meals could happen at tables instead of camping stoves wedged between car seats. It was within reach now. Not someday, not eventually, soon. But something Maggie had written kept echoing in Sarah's mind. The letter she had found behind the oven. The words that had changed how she understood everything. Now it is your turn. Give someone else their chance. She had been watching for that person, the one who needed what she had needed, the desperate soul hiding behind professional smiles and careful words. The fighter who had not yet found their fight. She found her on a Tuesday morning in late January. The woman appeared at the truck window just after the breakfast rush had ended and before the lunch crowd arrived. That quiet hour when Sarah usually caught up on prep work and let her mind wander through the endless list of things that needed doing. She was 28 maybe. Red hair pulled back in a ponytail that had been neat this morning but had loosened with the particular fatigue of someone who had been walking for a while. Her clothes were clean but worn in the way that spoke of careful maintenance rather than recent purchase. Professional enough for an interview. Practical enough for everything else. But it was her eyes that Sarah recognized. That particular combination of hope and exhaustion and determination that she had seen in her own reflection for months. The look of someone who was holding themselves together through force of will and had been doing it for so long they had forgotten there was any other way to exist. Hi. The woman's voice carried carefully constructed confidence that did not quite reach her eyes. I saw your help wanted sign. Sarah had not put up a help wanted sign, did not need help in any official capacity, had been managing alone with occasional assistance from Walt and Helen, and the community that had formed around the truck. But she heard herself respond before her brain could catch up with her mouth. "What kind of experience do you have?" The woman blinked, surprise flickering across her face before she composed herself. "Retail mostly. Customer service. I managed a convenience store for 3 years before it closed. I know how to handle a register, how to deal with difficult customers, how to show up every day even when showing up feels impossible." That last phrase landed differently than the others. More honest, more raw. The kind of thing you said when you were too tired to filter and too desperate to pretend. "What is your name?" "Jessica Harper. People call me Jess." Sarah studied her, seeing the signs she had learned to recognize. The shadows under the eyes that spoke of sleep that never quite came. The careful way she held herself like she was always ready to move. The shoes that were slightly too worn for someone going to job interviews because shoes were expensive and priorities had to be made. "You have kids." Jess's face shifted, a flash of fear before she covered it. "Two girls, 6 and 4. I am working on childcare. I can be flexible on hours, whatever you need." Sarah heard what she was not saying. Working on childcare meant she did not have it figured out yet. Flexible on hours meant she would take whatever she could get. Whatever you need meant she was desperate enough to accept anything. "I am asking because I need to know your constraints so we can work around them." Jess stared at her, the words not computing. Like Sarah had spoken in a foreign language that sounded like English, but carried meanings she had never encountered. Most employers asked about childcare to screen people out, to find reasons not to hire, to eliminate candidates who might have complications that made scheduling difficult. No one asked so they could accommodate. 15 an hour, Sarah heard herself say. Part-time to start, flexible schedule around your kids. You will learn the recipes, the register, the customers. When can you start? Jess's eyes filled with tears she was clearly trying not to let fall. Tomorrow. I can start tomorrow. Thank you. Oh God, thank you. Do not thank me yet. The work is hard. The hours can be long, and you will be on your feet more than you have been in your life. But if you show up and work hard, we will figure everything else out as we go. Jess nodded, words apparently beyond her capacity at the moment. Sarah handed her an apron from the stack she kept in the truck. Pink with the sugar and spice logo that Lily had designed. Slightly too large but functional. Tomorrow, 6:30. Bring something warm because it is cold at that hour and the truck takes a while to heat up. Jess took the apron, held it like it was something precious. Something that meant more than fabric and thread. I will be here, I promise. I will not let you down. She walked away, disappearing around the corner of Main Street, her posture slightly different than when she had arrived. Something lifted that had been pressing down. Walt appeared from wherever Walt appeared from. His usual silent approach that suggested he had been military or a cat in a previous life. You just hired someone. Apparently. You do not need help. Sarah looked at him. At this man who had given her chances she had not earned, who had taught her skills she had not known she needed, who had kept a promise to a dead woman by helping a stranger. Maggie's letter said to give someone else their chance. Jess needs a chance. Walt grunted, the sound carrying volumes of things he would not say out loud. Your business, your choice. He walked away. But Sarah could have sworn she saw something like approval in the set of his shoulders. Jess proved herself within the first week. She arrived early every day, stayed late when needed, learned the recipes with the intensity of someone who understood that this opportunity might not come again. Asked questions that showed she was thinking, made suggestions that showed she was paying attention. By day 3, she could run the register without guidance. By day 5, she was helping with prep work. By day 7, she was greeting regular customers by name and remembering their usual orders without being told. But it was the things she did not say that told Sarah the most. The way she ate slowly at break time, savoring food like someone who had learned not to take meals for granted. The way she always asked to take leftover cupcakes home, claiming her girls loved them, but packing them with a care that suggested they might be dinner as well as dessert. The way she changed clothes in the truck's tiny bathroom, emerging each day in the same rotation of 3 outfits that she kept immaculately clean despite their obvious age. Sarah recognized the signs because she had lived them, had worn the same 3 shirts for months while living in the van, had savored every meal because the next one was never guaranteed, had maintained appearances through sheer force of will because letting them slip meant admitting defeat. 2 weeks after Jess started, Sarah found her crying in the back of the truck. Quiet sobs she was trying to muffle. shoulders shaking with the force of keeping it contained. Sarah did not ask what was wrong, did not pry or push or demand explanations. She just sat down beside Jess on the floor of the truck and waited. The story came out in pieces, broken sentences between tears. A marriage that had ended badly. A husband who had left debts behind when he disappeared. An apartment she could not afford on her own. An eviction. A shelter that was full. A car that had become a home because it was the only option left. 6 weeks. Jess had been living in her car with her 2 daughters for 6 weeks, parking in different lots each night to avoid police attention, using the YMCA for showers, feeding her girls with wages that barely stretched to cover food because gas for the car and the phone bill for job searching and the endless small costs of survival added up faster than money came in. Sarah listened, did not interrupt, did not offer solutions or advice, or the kind of empty comfort that people gave when they did not know what else to say. When Jess finished, Sarah was quiet for a long moment, processing, remembering, seeing her own journey reflected in this woman's words. How much did you need to get into an apartment? Jess laughed, the bitter sound of someone who had done the math too many times. First month, last month, security deposit. Most places want $2,500 minimum. I have maybe $300 saved. At this rate, I am 6 months from having enough. If nothing goes wrong, if nothing ever goes wrong. She laughed again, both of them knowing that nothing going wrong was not how life worked for people like them. Sarah stood up, extended her hand to help Jess to her feet. Come with me tonight. After we close, there is something I want to show you. That evening, Sarah led Jess and her 2 daughters up the narrow staircase behind Gloria's grocery store. The stairs creaked under their weight, old wood that had been walked on by generations of Millbrook residents, grocers and their families, renters who stayed for months or years. The accumulated history of a building that had witnessed more than a century of human struggle and triumph. Mia was 6, Sophie was 4. Both girls had their mother's red hair and their mother's careful watchfulness. They climbed the stairs holding hands, supporting each other the way children do when they have learned that the world is unpredictable and adults cannot always be trusted to make it safe. Mia kept looking back at her mother, checking, making sure Jess was still there, still following, still part of whatever was happening. The vigilance of a child who had learned too young that people sometimes disappeared without warning. Sophie held a stuffed rabbit that had seen better decades. Its fur was matted, one ear hung by threads, but she clutched it like it was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting under her feet. Gloria was waiting at the apartment door, her expression unreadable in that way that could mean anything from disapproval to anticipation. 74 years had taught her the value of keeping people guessing. The apartment was small, but clean. Smaller than Sarah had imagined from Gloria's description, but somehow exactly right. 2 bedrooms just as Gloria had described. A bathroom with the bathtub Lily had been dreaming about. A kitchen with actual counter space and a stove that was not wedged between car seats. The rent is $650 a month. Gloria's voice carried its usual matter-of-fact efficiency. First, last, and security comes to $1950, which I believe you have been saving for. Sarah nodded, watching Jess take in the space, watching Mia and Sophie peer into the bedrooms with the hesitant hope of children who had learned not to want things too badly. I have been thinking. Sarah's voice came out steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to propose. This place has 2 bedrooms. Lily and I could share one for a while. She is small enough that it would work. The other bedroom could be for you and the girls. Jess turned to stare at her, not understanding. Split the rent, half each. $325 a month is manageable. We save money together, help each other with the kids. In a year, maybe less, you have enough saved to get your own place if you want it. Why? The word came out broken. Why would you do this? Sarah reached into her pocket, pulled out Maggie's letter. The paper worn soft from being read so many times. Because someone gave me a chance when I had nothing. A woman I never met left me a truck and recipes and a costume and instructions. She asked me to pass it forward, to give someone else what I was given. She held the letter out. Let Jess read the words that had changed everything. Now it is your turn. Give someone else their chance. Jess read the letter twice, tears streaming down her face. Her daughters watching with the confusion of children who did not quite understand why adults cried, but knew it was important. Sarah, I do not know what to say. Say yes. Say you will work hard and show up and help me build this business into something that can support both of us. Say you will let me pay forward what was given to me. Jess nodded, words beyond her, clutching the letter like it was a lifeline, which in some ways it was. Gloria cleared her throat. Well, now that the crying is done, perhaps you would like to see the bathroom. I am told there is a bathtub that has been discussed extensively. Lily appeared from somewhere. She had a way of appearing when important things were happening, still wearing her cupcake costume because she had not taken it off voluntarily in months. Do you like bathtubs? She asked Mia and Sophie with the serious concern of someone discussing vital matters. Because I really like bathtubs. I think they are important. Sophie nodded solemnly. I like bubbles. Me too. Lily's face lit up. We can be bubble friends. And just like that, the children had decided that whatever the adults were arranging was acceptable because bubbles were involved and friendship had been offered. They moved in on a Saturday. The process took most of the day, not because there was much to move. Between Sarah and Jess, they owned almost nothing worth loading into a vehicle. A few boxes of clothes, some kitchen items Gloria donated from her store, a second-hand couch Walt appeared with in his truck without explanation, 2 mattresses from the church thrift shop that smelled like other people's lives but were clean and functional. The real work was not moving things. It was moving hearts, convincing 3 children that this strange new space would be home, that the walls would hold, that the doors would stay where doors were supposed to be instead of becoming car doors that never quite closed right. Lily appointed herself tour guide, leading Mia and Sophie through every room with the authority of someone who had lived there for years instead of hours. This is the kitchen. Mom says we can make cookies here, but not until she figures out how the oven works, because apparently ovens are different, and she already burned one thing and we do not talk about it. The girls followed her, absorbing information, filing away the details of this new reality. This is the bathroom. There is a bathtub. I have been talking about this bathtub for months. It is very important. We can have bubbles. Sophie's eyes went wide. Bubbles. So many bubbles. Lily's voice carried the weight of sacred promise. I will share my bubble soap. That is what friends do. The apartment filled slowly over the following weeks. Second-hand furniture that did not match but worked. Decorations the girls made in school. Photographs that accumulated on the refrigerator. The small accumulations of shared life that transformed a space into a home. Biscuit appointed himself guardian of all 3 girls, sleeping across the hallway between bedrooms like a furry checkpoint, investigating any noise that might represent danger, wagging his tail at approved visitors, growling at the mailman who clearly could not be trusted despite months of evidence that he only delivered paper. Gerald the rubber chicken became a shared treasure, passed between children with the solemnity of sacred ritual, squeaked at appropriate moments during games only they understood, tucked into bed at night by whoever's turn it was to be Gerald's guardian. Jess proved more than capable. Within a month, she was handling the register with confidence. Within 2 months, she was suggesting improvements that actually improve things. Better ways to organize the prep work, more efficient frosting techniques, customer service approaches that turned first-time buyers into regulars. She had ideas that came from years of retail experience, marketing concepts, menu adjustments, operational efficiencies that Sarah would never have considered because she was too close to the day-to-day work to see the bigger patterns. By month 3, Sarah made a decision. She found Jess cleaning up after closing, the evening light falling through the truck windows, creating shadows that stretched and shifted with the setting sun. I want to offer you something. Jess looked up, flour on her apron, exhaustion in her posture, but something else too, something that had not been there when she first appeared at the truck window. Confidence, maybe, or hope. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. 20% ownership, Sarah said. Partnership, equal voice in business decisions. Profit sharing based on contribution. Jess stared at her. What? You have earned it. The ideas you have brought, the work you have put in, the way you care about this place like it is yours, because it should be yours, partly. Sarah pulled out paperwork, documents a lawyer had drafted. Nathan Holloway had recommended someone, said it was the least he could do given the circumstances. The papers were official, binding, real. I do not understand. Jess's voice cracked. Why would you give away part of your business? You built this. I did not build it alone. Walt taught me mechanics. Gloria gave me space and credit. Helen taught me chemistry. Megan spread the word. The whole community showed up when I needed them. She held out the papers. Maggie did not build Sugar and Spice to make money. She built it to make connections, to create something that mattered beyond profit margins and sales numbers. The truck is not really a business. It is a reminder that people need each other, that we are not meant to survive alone. Jess took the papers, hands shaking. This is too much. It is exactly enough. You have two girls who need to see their mother succeed, who need to know that hard work leads somewhere, who need to believe that the world can be fair even when it usually is not. Sarah put her hand on Jess's shoulder. We grow this together. That is what partners do. Jess signed the papers through tears. Partnership sealed not with capital investment, but with something more valuable. Trust, belief, the willingness to take a risk on someone who had not yet proven they deserved it. Just as Maggie had done for Sarah. Just as someone had done for Maggie 30 years before. The chain continued, link by link, chance by chance. The winter softened into early spring, February giving way to March. The particular quality of Pennsylvania light changing as days grew longer and the memory of cold began to fade. Sugar and spice continued to thrive. $700 became $800 on good days. The apartment became home. The three girls became inseparable. The chaos became routine. Rick Tanner still operated his food truck at the old parking lot behind Gloria's store. He had stopped trying to sabotage Sarah's business months ago. Stopped blocking sightlines. Stopped playing loud music designed to drive customers away. The war had ended not with victory or defeat, but with the quiet exhaustion of a man who had forgotten what he was fighting for. Sarah saw him one afternoon in March, sitting alone on his truck's bumper, staring at his menu board with the particular emptiness of someone who had lost something they could not name. She bought 2 cupcakes from her own display, walked over, sat down beside him without asking permission. They sat in silence for a moment, the spring air carrying the first warmth of the season. Why are you here? Rick did not look at her, voice flat. Thought you might want one. Sarah held out a cupcake, Cinnamon Sky Swirl, her bestseller. Rick took it, more out of reflex than desire. You should hate me, after everything I did. Probably. Sarah bit into her own cupcake. But hating people is exhausting, and I have been too tired for exhausting things. Rick laughed, the sound hollow but real. You know why I went after you so hard? Sarah waited, letting silence invite confession. Your truck, your setup. It reminded me of when I started. 20 years ago, little truck, big dreams. Somewhere along the way, I forgot why I did this. Became about territory, about winning, about proving I was worth something, even though I had stopped doing anything worth doing. He looked at her for the first time, eyes carrying decades of choices he was only now questioning. Seeing you fight so hard for something real made me feel like what I had become. A bully, a sellout, someone my younger self would not recognize. Sarah considered this, the complexity of a man she had seen only as an obstacle, the human being behind the antagonist. It is not too late to remember why you started. Rick smiled, sad but genuine. Maybe. He took a bite of the cupcake, chewed slowly. This is really good, you know, actually good. I know, they did not become friends. That would have been too simple, too neat. Life did not resolve itself into easy reconciliations and clean endings, but something shifted between them. Rick stopped being an enemy, started being just another person trying to figure out how to survive in a world that did not make it easy. Sometimes that was enough, not forgiveness exactly, but acceptance that everyone was fighting battles no one else could see. April arrived with the particular softness that spring brings to Pennsylvania. Flowers pushing through soil that had been frozen for months. Trees remembering how to be green. The world renewing itself in the endless cycle that humans could observe but never quite replicate. April 14th, Maggie's birthday, the date Sarah had promised Nathan she would honor. The day she would make lemon burst cupcakes and remember the woman who had made all of this possible. Sarah woke at 4, earlier than usual. Something about the day demanding extra attention, extra care, the particular reverence that Memorial Days required. The apartment was quiet, the girls still sleeping. Jess's breathing soft and regular from the other bedroom where she shared space with her daughters. The sounds of a home at rest. Sarah moved through the darkness, familiar now with every creaking floorboard, every shadow, every path between furniture that allowed her to navigate without turning on lights that might wake sleeping children. She dressed in the bathroom, the same clothes she wore every day, the pink sugar and spice shirt that had become a uniform, the jeans that had been washed so many times they were soft as memory, The shoes that knew the contours of her feet because they had carried her through thousands of hours of standing and serving. Outside the window, the pre-dawn darkness held that particular quality of spring. Not quite warm, but no longer cold. The promise of day hiding just below the horizon. Jess met her at the truck at 5. Both of them moving through the familiar routines with the efficiency of partners who had learned each other's rhythms. The batter for lemon burst required fresh ingredients. Sarah had bought lemons the day before, bright yellow and fragrant. The smell of them filling the truck as she zested with the microplane Helen had taught her to use. Lily appeared at dawn, still wearing her cupcake costume, the foam slightly worn now from months of daily use, the sprinkles losing their felt fuzz, but she refused to consider replacement. This was the costume, the original, the one that had been waiting in the truck for whoever needed it. Her sprinkle dance had evolved over months. What had started as random movements had become choreography. Spins she had practiced, twirls she had perfected, a routine that customers waited for and filmed and shared on social media with captions that tried to explain why watching an 8-year-old dance in a cupcake costume made them feel better about the world. Biscuit took his position beside the display table. Gerald clutched in his mouth as always. The rubber chicken had become as much a part of Sugar and Spice's identity as the pink paint and the googly-eyed mascot. Customers asked about Gerald, wanted to know his story, wanted to believe there was meaning in a dog carrying a rubber chicken named after someone nobody could remember. The morning rush came and went. Customers who had become friends, faces Sarah knew by name now, stories she had learned through months of small conversations and accumulated trust. Walt stopped by at 10, bought his usual coffee, left his usual grunt of approval. But something in his posture was different today, something almost ceremonial. Gloria appeared at noon with fresh strawberries, claiming she had ordered too many. The lie transparent but accepted because some gifts came wrapped in pretense. The afternoon stretched long and golden. April light falling across Main Street like honey. The town that had been dying slowly for decades showing signs of something that might have been revival. New businesses opening in some of the empty storefronts. Young families moving in instead of moving away. Hope taking root in soil that had been barren for too long. Sugar and Spice was part of that. Sarah knew. The pink truck had become a symbol of possibility, proof that new things could grow in old places, that second chances were real even when they seemed impossible. She had just finished restocking the display when she saw her. An elderly woman in the line, 70s maybe, white hair pinned back in a style that had not changed in decades. She moved with the careful deliberation of someone whose joints had opinions about haste. Her clothes were simple but well-maintained, the kind of practical elegance that came from decades of knowing exactly who you were. Something about her felt familiar, the way you sometimes recognize a face before your brain can explain why. The woman reached the front of the line, studied the display with interest, eyes moving across the cupcakes like she was reading something written in frosting and sprinkles. "I will take a lemon burst, please." Sarah reached for the cupcake, hands steady despite something fluttering in her chest. "Special day for these. First time I have made them since the festival." The woman smiled, a particular kind of smile, knowing but kind. "I heard they were someone's favorite." Sarah wrapped the cupcake carefully, feeling watched in a way she could not explain. "$3.50, please." The woman handed her a $100 bill. "Keep the change." Sarah blinked. The tip was absurd, nearly 30 times the cost of the purchase. "I cannot accept this." "Consider it an investment." The woman's eyes held something deep, something that felt like recognition. "You have built something special here. It deserves support." Before Sarah could respond, the woman turned, walked toward where Lily was taking a break from dancing. Biscuit asleep at her feet, Gerald tucked under one arm. The woman bent down, her movement slow but graceful. "You dance beautifully, sweetheart. Keep doing that. The world needs people who are not afraid to be joyful." Lily looked up, face open with the trust children give to kind strangers. "Thank you. Do you want to see my sprinkle spin?" The woman laughed, soft and warm. "Maybe next time. I have to go now, but I will be watching." She straightened, caught Sarah's eye across the distance between them, held the gaze for a moment that stretched like taffy. Then she walked away, disappearing around the corner of Main Street. Her gait unhurried but purposeful, moving like someone who knew exactly where she was going. Sarah stood frozen, mind racing, trying to process what had just happened. The white hair, the careful movement, The way she had looked at the truck like she was seeing an old friend. She thought of the Polaroid tucked into the truck's visor, the photo of Maggie holding cupcakes, smiling with her whole face. Hair that would have been brown then, but would be white now if she had lived. If she had survived the cancer that Nathan said had taken her. But Nathan had said she passed, had said she was gone, had said the truck was all that remained. Except Gloria had sent flowers to a funeral and never received confirmation they arrived. Except Nathan had used the word past without specifying details. Except no one had ever actually said they saw Maggie die. Sarah ran to the corner, looked down Main Street in both directions. The woman was gone, vanished into the ordinary afternoon. No trace of where she had gone, or whether she had been real, or whether Sarah had imagined the whole thing. She stood there for a long moment, heart pounding, questions multiplying faster than she could process them. Then she stopped. Some mysteries were not meant to be solved. Some questions were better left unanswered. Some gifts came without explanation, and asking for one would diminish what they meant. If Maggie was alive, if she had somehow survived, if she was out there watching, then she had seen what Sarah had built, had seen the partnership with Jess, had seen the community that had formed around the truck, had seen the legacy continuing. That was enough. That had to be enough. Sarah walked back to the truck, tucked the $100 bill into the tip jar, returned to work. But something had shifted in her chest, some final piece clicking into place. She was not alone, had never been alone, even when it felt like she was. Maggie had been watching, whether from this world or whatever came after. She had been watching, and she approved. That evening, after the truck was closed and the cleaning was done and Lily and Jess's girls were playing in the apartment above Gloria's store, Sarah sat in the driver's seat of Sugar and Spice. The Polaroid of Maggie was clipped to the visor. The letter she had found was folded in her pocket. The mechanical journal that documented 15 years of repairs sat on the passenger seat. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. The Walmart parking lot where she had woken with nothing. The auction where she had bet everything. The months of work and failure and learning and refusing to quit. She thought about the people who had helped. Gloria with her space and credit and disguised generosity. Walt with his tools and teaching and gruff belief. Helen with her chemistry and patience. Megan with her words and platform. The community that had shown up when she needed them most. She thought about Jess, about the chance she had given that was really just passing forward what she had received, about the cycle that continued, link by link, person by person. And she thought about Maggie, the woman she had never met but somehow knew. The presence she felt in the truck, in the recipes, in the costume Lily still wore every day, in the letter that had changed everything. Life is short, Frost generously. Sarah smiled, whispered the words to the empty truck, to the universe, to wherever Maggie was listening. Thank you for the truck, for the chance, for believing in me before you knew who I was. She paused, feeling something she could not name. I will keep going. I will keep building. I will keep passing forward everything you gave me. Outside the truck, the spring evening settled soft and golden over Millbrook. The town that had been dying was showing signs of life. The storefronts that had been empty were starting to fill. The people who had been leaving were starting to stay. Sugar and Spice sat at the corner of Main Street, pink and improbable. Its googly-eyed cupcake mascot grinning at everyone who passed. Inside the truck, the oven was clean and ready. The recipes were laminated and organized. The costume hung on its hook, waiting for tomorrow. Gerald the rubber chicken sat on the dashboard, keeping watch. Sarah climbed out, locked the door, walked toward the apartment where her daughter waited, where her partner waited, where her life waited. Behind her, the truck sat in the gathering dusk, a monument to second chances, a reminder that impossible things sometimes happen to people who refuse to stop believing. Somewhere out there, a woman with white hair was walking through the spring evening. Maybe she was a stranger who happened to buy a cupcake. Maybe she was a ghost made of memory and wishful thinking. Maybe she was something else entirely. It did not matter. What mattered was what she represented. The proof that kindness echoed forward through time, that gifts given without expectation returned in ways you could never predict. That legacy was not about preserving the past, but living it into the future. Sarah reached the apartment door, paused with her hand on the handle. She could hear laughter inside. Lily and Mia and Sophie, the particular chaos of children being children. the sound of a home that had been earned through struggle and sustained through love. This was what second chances looked like, not dramatic transformations or lottery wins or sudden reversals of fortune. Just showing up every day, working hard, taking risks, trusting people, building something worth having from nothing but determination and other people's dreams. She opened the door, stepped inside, let the warmth and noise and life wrap around her. Tomorrow there would be cupcakes to make, customers to serve, a business to run. But tonight there was this: family she had found, community she had built, purpose she had earned. Tonight there was everything. And somewhere out there, in the spring evening, in the world she had fought so hard to find her place in, the chain continued. Someone else was running out of options, losing hope, wondering if tomorrow would be any different than today. Someone else needed a chance. And someday, somehow, Sarah would find them, would recognize the desperation she had once worn, would offer what had been offered to her. A chance, a bet, a belief that people were worth investing in even when they had given you no reason to believe. That was how it worked. That was how it had always worked. Someone gives, someone receives, someone passes forward. And the world becomes slightly less cold, slightly more possible, slightly more worth fighting for. Life is short. Frost generously.